Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube. It is time for our Week 9 NFL review. As always, Sam, a lot to talk about. We're going to do it for multiple hours.
Multiple hours. Big slate of games, all kinds of football stuff.
Always appreciate everybody that joins us live at 7 a.m. Shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Just missed on my lineup this week. But
yeah, I just missed as well, going 0 for 3, I think.
0 for 3?
I don't think either of the Washington ones came in.
I was 4 yards away with Josh Allen. But you guys can play along with Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use code Check the Mic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. We'll talk about them again later today.
It makes me feel slightly better about getting robbed of the Tank Dell touchdown, though. That even if I'd gotten that one, neither of the other ones came in.
Yeah, I mean that. You know, when you're watching, I'm like, Josh Allen, you had a wide open throw that you missed. This was all I needed, 4 yards on that final drive. Mm-hmm. Instead, they got all the yards on a defensive pass or a hit to the head by Jordan Poyer. They got 15 of the yards. We'll talk about that in a minute. Anyway, we got a lot to talk about, including the Tank Dell game, Thursday Night Football. So we'll go through every single game. Let's start with Thursday.
Yeah,
Thursday night. The Jets got the win, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
They got the win over the Houston Texans, 21-13. It was an ugly, ugly first half. Jets came alive in the second half. Did they save their season, Sam? Jets moved to 3-6. Texans fall to 6-3.
Yeah, well, I guess they're still alive. Probably not, but but it was good to get the win anyway. It was impressively a game of two halves, though. Like, even Roger said that. I think on the McAfee show, they were sort of praising him. Your best game as a Jet. And he's like, best half. Because the first half, I think, didn't he have the lowest yardage total he's had in his entire career or something? 32 passing yards in the first half. Lowest of his entire NFL career.
And they had been sacked twice for 18. They had 15 net passing yards in the first half.
The first 3 plays was like same old story. It was Aaron Rodgers misses a wide open Devontae Adams. Breece Hall then dropped the next ball, and then immediate sack on like a heavy blitz from the Texans. So it was like first half was all, that's still the same old stuff. But then it did seem to come together in the second half, and Rodgers did have a good half. The entire offense looked better, and they ended up being able to ease away from Houston thanks to a couple of weird plays late on where the Texans were attempting to come back and maybe going to make it tight, and then the whole thing fell apart.
Got to shout out Garrett Wilson because at one point, before Rodgers did end up hitting Devontae Adams on a 37-yard touchdown, but at one point, the only 2 touchdowns for the Jets were 2 one-handed catches by Garrett Wilson, the second of which, unbelievable, in the end zone.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson makes one of the greatest catches in NFL history, which also just happened to be one of the greatest catches of the weekend. Like, this is where we are in the state of wide receiver play in today's NFL. Every week, there's like 4 or 5 catches that are just insane, mind-blowing, you shouldn't be able to do that type of thing. Garrett Wilson had one. I mean, even just last night, the last game we saw,
Jordan
Addison had an absurd, like, horizontal, one-handed stab out of the air. Who else had a Garrett Wilson rivaling one-handed catch yesterday? But it's just never-ending list of, like, any one of these would be the greatest catch in 1991.
Demarcus Robinson one-handed.
That was just a routine.
That wasn't an OBJ type.
But somebody else had a ridiculous, like, Garrett Wilson-esque one-handed snag.
I cited my theory a couple weeks back on this that the kids have been, because the OBJ thing's 10 years old.
Yeah.
The kids have been practicing the OBJ catch since they were kids.
Right.
The kids have been since they were little.
You think they're replicating it?
Well, nobody even tried those catches until you saw OBJ do it. Nobody tried that. Now that's like in warm-ups, and you see, clips of people doing it in practice all the time. So they practice these things. They practice the spectacular catch more than ever because of OBJ. It's the OBJ-ification of the NFL, which is awesome. It's great for us. It's exciting. So an unbelievable catch by Garrett Wilson. On the unexciting side, the Malachi Corley run, we ranted like old men last week. You run through the end zone, young man. Run through the end zone. And Malachi Corley, not a listener to Check the Mic. He doesn't listen to us. And so he dropped the ball at the goal line. And I said, my guys, it would have been a 19-yard touchdown run. I would say, listen, you make it a 29-yard touchdown run. You run through the back of the end zone. He didn't do it. He dropped it.
Did you see the guy that had $15 bet on Malachi Corley to be the first touchdown scorer? Would have made $1,500 and lost out because the guy dropped the ball before the end zone.
My favorite My favorite answer to that when people are like, it's rigged. It's rigged. Like, yes. They wanted to make sure you didn't get your $1,500. And for that amount of money, we're just gonna drop the ball at the goal line.
The two worst beats,
because it's rigged.
The two worst beats of the week were the guy who lost out on $1,500 because Corley just couldn't carry the ball another 6 inches, and the guy that had Tua's passing prop, which he had until he passed the ball on pitchy woo woo at the end of the game, and Jalen Waddle decided to run in the wrong direction 25 yards and get tackled. That cost that guy. That's Tua's passing prop goes from covered to no, sorry.
That got me some box score origami tags that Waddle has 2 catches for -4 and a touchdown.
Yeah.
In that game because of the negative however many yards that he got. Anyway, just to put a bow on Texans Jets.
Well, hang on, we did rant about this. It is mind blowing that Corley did that. Like we ranted about it because Kyle Pitts probably did it and got away with it in the previous week, right? They couldn't find an angle right down the goal line. They didn't have one. So just like, we can't overturn it. We call it a touchdown. That should have been in every single team's prep that week. Hey, just a reminder, this is staggeringly stupid. Don't do it, right? This guy dodged a bullet. It could have cost him the game. Do not be that individual this week. And Malachi Corley, who has been like sounding off over the season, like he wants to play more, right? I don't understand why the Jets aren't playing me. Like, maybe this is why. You had one shot dialed up, you got your opening touchdown, you would have made a difference, and instead, you dropped the ball.
Do you think guys do this at practice?
I honestly have never been able to understand the headspace of doing it at all. I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. There's a lot of things that I understand as an instinctive reaction to whatever. I simply do not understand dropping the ball before you reach the goal line.
We have no idea why certain players aren't playing. It's like, he scores a lot of touchdowns at practice, but he keeps dropping the ball
every time. Drops the ball like Deshaun Jackson.
Again, just to kind of wrap up, the Jets moved to 3-6. They still have a lot of work to do, but look, their whole season was on the line, especially after that first half. Texans depleted offense. Tank Dell had to step up with 6 catches for 126 yards, some of them late, but they were completely out of sync. We mentioned on the instant reaction show, or at least I mentioned in particular, C.J. Stroud went 11 of 30 for 191, and so he had 11 completions and he got sacked 8 times. That is awful. And it's to me, I'm a little concerned about Stroud and the offensive line. Kenyon Green at left guard struggled mightily over the last few weeks, then got hurt. Kenyon Green, yes. Kendrick Green also came in for him. Like the Texans might be in the market for a starting guard. That doesn't happen a lot at the trade deadline, but they might need to. Yeah. Right. They have a couple days to do it. They got Joe Mixon going on the ground, still couldn't put points on the board. And then you mentioned the funky stuff at the end where they turned down a made field goal, had another chance to get in the end zone, get stuffed again after a penalty, and then they missed the next field goal, keeping it a 2-possession game.
I mean, that would have been
a 1-possession game late.
That would have been the most like a play. Remember, we've been saying like no one individual is responsible for the Jets sort of not having success this season. It's just idiot mistakes shared out amongst everybody, right? Imagine this game where the Texans are driving to try and. What was the score at that point? This would have tied it up or put them.
They would have had a touchdown opportunity.
But if they got the touchdown, to tie. So let's say they tie the game, they end up winning,
or take the lead. I think it was 14.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. So I think that touchdown could have put them ahead. Imagine they lose the game, and you're coming out of this game going, the biggest areas of responsibility for this loss are guy drops the ball before walking into the end zone, and other guy cans the center in the most obvious special teams penalty you're going to find that took points off the board and replaced them with more points, right? That would have been insane. Like they straight up can the center, which you haven't been able to do for years. The Texans had a made field goal at that point, decided let's keep the drive going, let's try and score the touchdown, end up not getting it, settle for a chip shot field goal, which they then miss. And then from that point, the game goes away. Like he doinked the bar from 27 yards away.
It was a weird sequence. The Jets also roughed the punter on 4th and 21.
Right.
I mean, they still have.
They still had the mistakes.
They still have massive issues.
Cost them this game.
Yeah, they just overcame them with special playmakers, right? Yeah. That's why you go get Devontae Adams because he has that long touchdown. Garrett Wilson stepped up, made some huge plays. And so,
and Quinnen Williams, had that interior in an absolute blender all game long. I mean, people are focusing on, or were focusing on, look at the difference Hassan Reddick has made, like blah, blah. But like the edge pressure was largely made by Quinnen Williams up the middle almost every single play.
Stroud spinning out. And again, really quick just to reiterate, Stroud is a pocket passer first who's been very impressive outside of structure. When he starts to play too much outside of structure, it's not his game. And I don't think he was doing it by necessity the other day because of the pressure. It's something the Texans, they have to tidy up their pass protection. So they're 6-3. Jets fall. I'm sorry, Jets move to 3-6 on here. There's life. We're not going to get Jets shouty show stuff this week.
Well, let's stop the Bills clinching the division.
Yeah, just the Bills have to wait another week.
Not really, but
might have to wait till Thanksgiving for that. All right, so that was Thursday night. Let's get to the 1 o'clock slate from yesterday. New England Patriots at the Tennessee Titans. The Titans get the overtime win. What was the final score? I'm trying to find it here. 20-17.
On the screen.
I got it. Oh, yeah, read the screen. I forgot. Tennessee's first win since week 4, according to the screen. They moved to 2-6. Patriots fall to 2-7. I think, Titans fans, I don't know how much they're caring about wins right now versus draft picks and figuring out the QB situation next year. From a New England perspective, Drake May touchdown to tie it.
Crazy play.
At the end of regulation, I thought that was outstanding. I think for New England, you're just looking for signs of development and hope from Drake May. Despite his game-ending interception and a couple other turnover-worthy plays, you have a little bit of that hope because Drake May showing his playmaking ability yesterday.
Yeah, the second longest time to throw in the NFL this season for that play, the longest being that Jaden Daniels Hail Mary where he ran around for like 15 seconds. But absolutely ridiculous play.
You know what I loved about it, though, is I'm just going to say this. Tom Brady also played for the Patriots, so we're not comparing him to Tom Brady. Tom Brady did this well. When you face a 3-man rush in the red zone, you very rarely should throw the ball in rhythm. When there's a 3-man rush, very rarely is somebody going to be schemed open.
Because there's a lot of people in a very short
space. Because there's
tight space of field.
Exactly. And it drives me nuts when quarterbacks do it. And that was like the one thing as I'm watching the play, I'm like, good job by Drake May. At the very least saying, I'm going to buy time. And it's like the one time you can actually start to look at the rush a little bit because there's only 3 guys to keep an eye on. And so I thought May did an outstanding job saying, it's a 3-man rush. I've only got one shot. I'm not going to just chuck it into tight. And he ended up having to throw it into tight coverage. But he exhausted every option, waited as long as he could, and then threw the game-tying touchdown. I thought that part of it was outstanding.
I mean, it was one of those plays where when he put the ball in the air, you're like, oh, he's just lobbed it to nowhere. Like he's spent 12 seconds or whatever trying to evade people, and then he's just lofted it to like just a prayer. And then it was one of those plays where he put so much sort of air under it and lobbed it to a space that it took a while for his intended target to kind of emerge at that spot. Like, oh, look, there's a guy there. And he made a play. Ramondre Stevenson ends up surfacing with the football. Incredible play by Drake May.
So that was a great play. And then if you look at the stat line, he led the team in rushing yards by a mile, 95 rushing yards. Ramondre Stevenson only had 10 carries for 16 yards. New England's run game, remember back in week 1, it was like, oh, they're going to run the ball and play defense. They beat the Bengals. They have not run the ball effectively since that point. And so I think we'll talk about the Titans in a second, but high level, looking at Drake May in New England, we thought he was stepping into a difficult situation with an inexperienced and not very good offensive line, with no established playmakers, and now with very little run game. And I think he's had a great feel as a scrambler. Look, he had some bad plays, game-ending interception. He fumbled in the red zone in the fourth quarter to give Tennessee a chance to go up. Bad interception earlier. But at the end of the day, I think he's elevating New England's offense and what they have, and I'm intrigued to see what happens once they get some better players around him.
Yeah, and, the other thing is he's got to learn to slide, the same way we were saying Jaden Daniels.
He's taking some awkward hits.
Not just awkward, but, again, unnecessary. There was a play where he broke through, he made a couple of guys miss, and then it's one of those ones where the only way this play ends now is 2 options. Take a hit the turf. Stop taking the hit. You could tell he was thinking
about sliding a couple times.
Right,
he was thinking about it.
Right, which is where, again, Jaden Daniels was. Remember, right at the start of the season, there were a couple of plays where he took off, and it's like, oh, I'm not supposed to take this hit. Like, how do I awkwardly just throw myself to the ground like a sack of potatoes? Like,
all the more coming out of, he got concussed last week.
That's what I'm saying.
Coming out of concussion protocol.
Which, again, was a relatively unnecessary hit where he was diving head first. Like, take what's there, then hit the ground. Like, I'm okay with you thinking you can beat a guy, sidestepping and make that guy miss, but then, like, at some point you have to run that calculation and go, there's no actual way out of this play other than taking a hit. Let's end it here. So he's got to do that. The receiving core is I think the biggest indictment. Remember, we were like, okay, it's a bad-looking receiving core on paper, but on the other hand, he's coming in with a couple of rookies. They've been looking good in camp, and maybe those guys will all develop together, and it'll be better than we think it is. But Jalen Polk has had a nightmare of a season so far, like drops, all kinds of stuff wrong. He's effectively been benched and basically wasn't taking any part in the game yesterday. He ran 6 routes or something. Javon Baker, who was the other one that had impressed people in camp, is barely seeing the field. So now, like, his targets are Keyshawn Butte, who had been, like, written off as a potential player in the offseason, was just a guy that would appear and also him, in the list of players that were on the depth chart. He's their number 1 wide receiver at this point. Hunter Henry, obviously the tight end, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne. All of the young potential has been replaced by the veterans that we know aren't good enough, and that's who he's throwing to.
They're all good complementary pieces, right? Like Pop Douglas you'd be like, wow, that's a really good slot receiver. You kind of hope he's got 2 guys outside of him to, make bigger plays. He did have a really nice one-handed catch in this one, though, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're right. And then again, the offensive line, I think Mays helped make them look a little bit better than Brissett did, despite his, holding on to the ball sometimes. So overall, I don't know where the grade ends up for May. The rushing grade will look outstanding from PFF.
Right.
Some of the turnover-worthy plays will drag down the passing, but
he's been really impressive.
I've been impressed with May. Despite the game-ending interception. From Tennessee's perspective, I mean, good win for them. They're still playing hard. I hate when teams have, they're 2-6 or 1-6 going into the game, and you have good players kind of going under the radar. That's Tony Pollard this year. He's been outstanding. Tweeted out a stat, just maybe poking Cowboys fans a little bit, but Pollard is averaging 3.8 yards after contact per rush this year.
Let me guess.
Which happens to be the same yards per attempt the Cowboys running backs are averaging overall. But Pollard, remember the second half of the year, how good he looked coming off of his injury last year. And we've been saying, hey, give Tajay Spears more. Spears has been hurt, and Pollard carrying the load for Tennessee. He's done a great job.
Yeah. I mean, he struggled a little bit being elevated into that alpha role for Dallas. But remember, the reason he eventually got given that role, and people were like clamoring for it for years, is because he looked phenomenal as the complement to Zeke Elliott. Well, now he's back looking like that guy. Like, he is a fantastic running back when he's healthy and on song, and he has been. The other thing I think that's been flying under the radar for Tennessee, because the team overall has been so bad, that's a good defense, even though they've like shipped off pieces already. Like, they've been sellers knowing that this team isn't going anywhere yet. That is a good defense. I mean, they got an absolute ton of pressure against Drake May, albeit against a bad offensive line in New England. But like, Arden Key had a ton of pressure, Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons. It's a good defense that's playing hard still.
So coming out of this game, it's too early for where would you pick today in the draft. But New England is one of 7 teams who are 2-7.
Chasing the number 1 pick.
Technically would have the number 1 overall pick if the season ended today, which it doesn't.
It doesn't.
We're only halfway through. And then Tennessee is one of 2 teams at 2-6. So there are 9 teams with 2 wins right now in the NFL, 2 of which are these 2 teams, Titans and Patriots. Anything else on this one?
No, I believe we got no more use for that game.
No more use for that game. Thank you. Thanks for jumping in.
You're welcome.
Let's stay in the AFC East here. Buffalo Bills 30, Miami Dolphins 27. Did the Bills clinch the AFC East yet? They moved to 7-2.
They do.
Dolphins 2-6. Man, it was a good game. It was a fun game. The Dolphins coming in with a 2-5 record shouldn't diminish what they're capable of. Maybe I overlooked that a little bit when predicting the game, but they were a good team last year.
Yeah.
That just struggled to get over the hump against better teams, good teams, and now
it might be exactly the same now.
It might be exactly the same, but they just dug too deep of a hole after Tua's injury. So Buffalo moves to 7-2. Dolphins fall to 2-6. Buffalo gets the game-winning 61-yard field goal from Tyler Bass.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame for Miami that their season basically just got dealt too large a handicap to start because of the Tua concussion thing. You had to park your starting quarterback for a month, and the backups are simply not capable of functioning, which is its own indictment, I think, of both talent acquisition and McDaniel as a head coach, that they were completely unable to get anything with those guys. But Tua, as the starting quarterback, transforms everything, and Miami is a good team when he's there. I mean, that offense function, that did as good a job against Buffalo's defense as really anybody this season, and for a while. It's just that even with that, they're still not necessarily any better than a team like Buffalo, who's a legit contender, and they end up coming off on the wrong side of it, and that's now 2 games consecutively where that's been true. The offense clicks, it's back, it's exactly the same as it was before Tua got hurt. Still might not be enough to win those games, and so you're just too far behind now.
Well, then you're almost looking at like defensive regression for Miami, because I was so impressed by their offense, really impressed. Tua, I sent you one of the throws that he I mean, he's throwing the ball like 2 zones away,
which is like what he's known for. I mean,
yeah.
that's the sort of the poster child Tua play, right? Is, hey, look at this spot that he's throwing to like a minute and a half before his wide receiver ends up in that spot, like the Drake May play we talked about, right? Where he's like thrown to a spot and then, oh, look, Ramondre Stevenson just pops up there at the last second. I mean, he's doing that all the time, except instead of a lofted like prayer, it's the ball's just going to that spot and then Tyreek Hill is about to zoom into the space.
It's really impressive. And look, Buffalo had done a really nice job against Tua. He had an relative to his other grades or production, however way you want to break it down, against Buffalo, Tua had struggled.
Yeah.
I thought he was really good in this game. Scramble drill touchdown to Jalen Waddle. We mentioned a few minutes ago Waddle's ridiculous stat line where he ends up with, was it officially two catches for -4 yards. I appreciate last week we're trying to get something going here. Box score origami had a bunch of people tagging me in box score origami, including this Jalen Waddle one, because he ends up with the -25 or whatever it was on that last play on the pitchy woo woo as you call it.
Which, by the way, that's not my thing, right? Like people were complaining.
Who started that?
Chris Berman, I think.
Did he?
I think that was a Berman thing. Anyway, it's not me. It was a Berman. It might have been Trey Wingo. Somebody like that, like luminary of
some ESPN talking head.
Luminary of like network television came up with that, and it's funny, so I use it. But like, I didn't invent that. That's not my thing. I'm just stealing it.
Oh yeah, I wasn't implying that.
No. But other people have. Like, I've used that before, and people are like, look at this idiot phrase you're using, pitchy. Like, I didn't.
It's because you're Irish.
Thing.
It's because you're from Ireland.
It probably.
And you must think it's rugby.
It's racism. That's what it is.
Tis the season. Look.
Scott Van Pelt, the chat says.
Good for Scott.
Scottish Bisque. What a name.
Miami ran the ball pretty well. Devin Achan's been really good over the last few weeks. Remember, they couldn't run the ball at all.
Yeah,
for
again,
like early in the year.
As soon as Tua's back.
Yeah,
Devin Achan is a thing again.
Yeah, impressed with Miami and their offense. Defensively, not impressed. It ended up being a Jordan Poyer hit to the head, a 15-yard penalty.
Safeties yesterday, and I use the term safeties as just an umbrella term because I think at least 2 of them were actually cornerbacks technically. But safeties were playing yesterday like they had no idea what year it was. There were at least 3 that I saw.
It might be because I posted because of the tweet I put out there a few weeks ago. They wanted to go back in time. I had the
post like Brian Dawkins highlights.
No, it was 2003 Patriots Colts AFC. I think it was the AFC Championship. Yeah. Eugene Wilson decapitated Reggie Wayne, who, by the way, popped right back up. Was like
it was nothing.
Yeah. The ball kind of slips through Wayne's hands. Eugene Wilson hits him hard. His head hits the ground really hard. He just popped right back.
Just boom, nothing.
Oh,
there were at least 3 that I saw yesterday, like plays that belonged in that era, right? Plays from at least 10 plus years ago, where the safety / corner is coming across to a wide receiver who you no longer can make that hit. You just can't, and they just delivered it like it was 15 years ago. And on every occasion, it's like flag comes out. And one occasion, apparently, they picked it back up. But still, that was one of them where Poyer comes across, just decks the dude. And it's like, you haven't been able to make that hit for a while now, at least not at that height.
Yeah, so that was one of the big plays that helped set up the Bill. I mean, it wasn't even a great game-winning drive.
Right.
They set up a 61-yard field goal. Josh Allen missed his final throw that would have put me over the top for my Prize Picks lineup. So we had a miss there. But the Bills get the game-winning field goal. The other play is, like, if you're a Dolphins fan hoping to save your season, a 63-yard touchdown to Ray Davis, essentially a busted coverage.
Really nice play from Davis.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good. I mean, he's a really good player. And look, when you look at how Buffalo's been built over these last couple of years, James Cook, like the year that they added James Cook and Khalil Shakir, specifically trying to be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit less reliant on vertical receivers or a vertical passing tree, creating after the catch. They've done a nice job there. You add Ray Davis to the mix.
And that play in particular is like tailor-made for Ray Davis. Like, that guy in space is phenomenally good.
Yeah.
Like, just has instincts to run to the space. And that they busted the coverage on him slightly. He gets the ball. There's two guys converging on him. So he heads exactly to the space between the two of them. And they end up clattering into each other. Neither one of them can make the tackle, and he ends up scoring the touchdown. Like, the perfect Ray Davis play.
So on that play, you've got the 63-yard touchdown, 63-yard free touchdown for Josh Allen, and he also has this is the fun part about like the QB's role in his stats. You have a 63-yard touchdown to Ray Davis, where it's almost all Ray Davis. You have a 2-yard touchdown to Quentin Morris, where Josh Allen is unbelievable, scrambling around and just flips it out. It looks, I mean, it almost would have been called a fumble if they were reviewing this. You know what I mean? But he flicks it out right to Quentin Morris with an incredible 2-yard touchdown. The QB's role in his production is fun sometimes.
Well, there's that.
And, of course, and then the interception part.
There's that, and there's the fact that he now has 2 interceptions on the season. And
that's where you thought I was going.
Neither one of them is his fault.
Yeah.
The first one was that play where Amari Cooper like fell over at his break, and the corner is there waiting for the slant instead of the receiver. And then there's this one where he puts the ball right on Keon Coleman, who just basically drops it into Jalen Ramsey's hands. And what should have been, I actually don't think he'd have gotten in. I think they were saying, it could have been a touchdown. I think he would have been tackled short. But either way, it should have been a catch and ends up being an interception. It's funny. So you've got, like, someone at some point is going to seriously make the argument that Allen, the only interceptions that Josh Allen has thrown have not been his fault. He's therefore been perfect. Like, he's also got like a million turnover-worthy plays that haven't been.
I'm sure it's on the internet right now. Josh Allen, his 2 interceptions shouldn't even be.
Right.
They shouldn't even be. Anyway, look, he didn't have to do a ton, but when he had to make that special play in the red zone, make a couple of those, he did it. 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. They'll look at the touchdown-interception ratio and say it's a pretty good season. Overall, it has been for Allen. The tweet that I put out there last night, just to put some context around this, they used to be an air yard heavy offense. And so since 2021, I mean, this goes back further. I just picked the last few years. 21 and 22, less than 40% of Josh Allen's yards came after the catch. Last year it bumped up to 46%. This year it's almost 60%. He's at 59.3% of his yards coming after the catch, which is often used in Twitter circles. When you're making Twitter arguments, Sam, you call guys a yak merchant. Oh, this guy, all his stats are coming after the catch. He's not that good. He's a yak merchant. But Bills fans have taken a different tact. When I tweet this stuff out, when people put this stuff out there, they're crying tears of joy. They're thankful that the offense is now taking a little bit of pressure off of Josh Allen, that they do have this underneath pass game that isn't just catch and, get tackled. It's catch and create, and puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Bills fans are thrilled with what Joe Brady has done and how this offense has changed over the last couple of years. And I would say it does, I always come down to options to win, right? We'll see where the Bills are at the end of the season if they stay healthy. But come playoff time, maybe they have a few more options now with their yak players, but also with superhuman Josh Allen to complement them. So I think it's a good balance in Buffalo right now. And that's why they've clinched the AFC East here in early November.
And they did it without Amari Cooper. So we were back to kind of the offense with no real perimeter threats. Everyone is like, look at the target leaders. It's Dalton Kincaid, it's Khalil Shakir, it's James Cook. It's all of the over-the-middle, horizontal yak people.
Anything else on this game? Rest in peace to Tua's passing total.
Rest in peace to Tua's over, yeah. Chop Robinson, I showed up, I guess, for the first time. Like, he got a sack, but
that was a weird one when he like stumbled and was it?
No, that was a different one. That was a hit where he fell out of his stance and still beat the left tackle around the corner.
Left tackle didn't move though.
I know
on that.
He did get a sack on, I think, more of a cleanup play, but he showed something, I think, for the first time really this season, which is a positive development, I guess, for them.
The last thing to touch on was, we talked about it last night a little bit, Tua diving for a first down on 4th and 3, diving head first. I know it's, I'm not trying to like personalize the game experience this whole time, but like it's a tough watch for a lot of people, hoping he doesn't get hit in the head again.
It's like the Alex Smith thing. When Alex Smith came back from his leg injury and Aaron Donald jumped on his back like for a sack, everybody in the world was like, oh God, no. You know, everyone immediately felt concerned for the safety of Alex Smith's leg that he almost lost off the back of that infection. I think it's the same with Tua. Like when that guy launches himself head first anywhere at this point, you're like, dude, no. What are we doing here?
All right. Got no more use for that game. Cincinnati Bengals 41, Las Vegas Raiders 24. Bengals move to 4-5. Raiders fall to 2-7. We'll start with Raiders discussion now. They fired all of their offensive coaching staff overnight. They're heading into their bye week. Luke Getsy, offensive coordinator. Rich Scangarella, was he the QB coach? Like 3 coaches have been fired.
They've identified the problem, and it turns out it's everybody except Antonio Pierce. So they've relieved them of their duties, which is the euphemism that is used for the sake of everybody's feelings. They haven't been fired. As Adam Schefter out here tweeting misinformation. They've been fired. They haven't been fired.
Of their duties.
The Raiders themselves have told you what's happened. They have simply been relieved of their duties, right? So they have relieved these coaches of their duties, and now they will be fixed.
Yeah. Since Tom Brady has taken over as owner, they have 0 wins and 3 fired coaches.
Yeah.
Just saying, that's the stat.
Mm-hmm. Not ideal.
Not ideal.
No.
You know what? Every time the Raiders look bad, I think of the Ravens. I think of how the Ravens are sitting here at 6-3, 3 games plus a tiebreaker, about 2.5 games behind Kansas City for the number 1 seed, and them thinking back, man, we really blew it against the Raiders, and then maybe when we get to the Browns game, we really blew it against Jameis Winston and the Browns. I think of the Ravens, how they could easily be, 7-1 instead of 6.
I mean, it is crazy.
8-1 instead
the
of
Ravens, who out here are looking like the best team in the NFL in most weeks, they have a loss to the Raiders, who have now lost 5 straight and look abjectly disastrous.
And because it happened in week 2, we're like, oh, maybe the Raiders are 1-1 now at the time. Maybe they're a little better than we thought. And they convince you for a few weeks, but it's still an historically bad rushing attack. I mean, Zamir White did finish with 6 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
It's a rough offense. Got to see a little more Desmond Ridder again. Trey Hendrickson was unblockable for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, certainly unblockable against the players that the Raiders are playing at left tackle.
Andrus Peat.
Yeah.
We haven't told our... No, forget it. Andrus Peat, who's a guard, who...
not a good one.
One offensive lineman looked at his... one offensive line coach back during draft time looked at his body type and basically made an assessment off the eye test.
Yeah.
He called
him cankles.
He called him cankles.
Yeah.
Thinking he's a guard. And so he was playing left tackle for a little bit. Trey Hendrickson beat him a couple times. Thayer Munford, oh gosh, he had a play. Sometimes an offensive lineman gets popped, knocked back onto their butt, right? And you go back, and the offensive line community is very protective. They're like, well, he tripped.
Yeah.
He got tripped. Munford didn't get tripped on this one. Trey Hendrickson just absolutely obliterated him and then sacked Gardner Minshew, engulfed him. Trey Hendrickson was unblockable for the Bengals, and everything was not good for the Raiders.
No, I mean, you just look at some of the players they're trotting out there on that offensive line in this game. As you said, Thayer Munford, Andrus Peat, who, as you said, is a guard, but importantly, a bad guard. Like, he's not a good offensive guard.
Below average starting NFL guard historically. Just say it.
Yeah, that's another word for that. He's been bad.
Not bad. You throw bad around. You throw bad around too much.
Look,
too much.
If you put the standard, if the baseline is you and me,
it's below average.
He's good.
He's a better guard
than you.
If
the baseline is NFL caliber player, he's bad.
Below average.
No, bad. If the baseline is
all right, keep going.
NFL player, he's been bad. He's been a bad guard, and now he's being asked to play left tackle, which he played in college at Stanford. That's not going to work. Right. So he got obliterated. Munford got obliterated. DJ Glaze is out there playing on the other side. He didn't perform particularly well either. Like, there's just a ton of people that don't belong playing NFL games right now for the Raiders offensive line. Consequently, Trey Hendrickson immediately becomes the NFL sack leader off the back of 4 of them in this game.
Meanwhile, on the other side, Joe Burrow goes 27 of 39, 5 touchdowns and a pick. The pick was, I would have to review it. It's very much not on him. He's throwing a screen blind, and nobody blocks Jack Jones, who just reads it and runs it in for a pick 6. Outstanding play by Jack Jones. It gave a little semblance of life, I think, for the Raiders. Got him within 3 scores late, but not enough. I thought, so Burrow's without T. Higgins and without Jermaine Burton.
Yeah, who apparently can't show up to meet. Was it a walkthrough or a meeting that he missed?
I think it was Friday's walkthrough.
Okay.
I had heard rumblings throughout the weekend that Jermaine Burton did something that people were upset about, which apparently didn't show up to practice. So he didn't play.
Yeah. And in a week where he would have featured, I mean, we said before when they were missing people, it was a career season high in usage and performance, like all this kinds of thing. Like there's an opportunity there when people are missing for Jermaine Burton to be a significant part of this offense, and the guy can't even just show up to do it. Like that's bad.
Yeah, that's like me, the film watcher. I've touted him because of watching film.
Because of his tape. Yeah.
He's a great player.
Right.
We knew all of the red flags that had come up and how no one had really said many nice things at either Georgia or Alabama about Jermaine Burton.
Coaches.
Yes, coaches. Everybody that worked with him. And, starting to see some of that show up. And that's both like on the field, maybe not being in the right place at the right time, and apparently not showing up. Anyway, despite all that, Burrow, really an outstanding game. He had 7 under pressure yesterday. Burrow was 7 of 13 with 4 passing touchdowns. So 4 of his touchdowns, a lot of those were pocket movement and feel and rolling out of the pocket. He did a great job yesterday, I thought, navigating the pocket. It's not a great Raiders pass rush. Max Crosby had a lot of pressures, but he is, I don't know if we've brought this up yet. He's on pace for probably his worst season in about 3 years.
Crosby?
Yeah. Just as far as pure dominance and one-on-ones and win rate and everything. So it's just not a great Raiders pass rush, but Burrow navigated things well. Mike Gesicki got involved at tight end, 5 catches for 100 yards and 2 scores. And of those 5 touchdowns, none of them went to Jamar Chase. So I thought it was a really good game for Cincinnati, spreading the ball around and Burrow just managing the game. And look, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year, and Cincinnati has a chance to go from 4-5 and go on a run and get back into things. And they took care of business, beating the Raiders in this one.
Yeah, Burrow was phenomenal. Gesicki had a big game. Poor Eric All looks like he did his ACL again. It was another one of those non-contact injuries that immediately the Twitter doctor people were like, that looks like an ACL. It's the same knee, I think, that he did the ACL previously as well. So that's a really big blow for the rookie tight end. It's going to put him down for a while, and it's obviously a red flag. It's obviously concerning that it's the same knee that he did it before on. So that's a big blow for them. But yeah, Jamar Chase had a good game despite the kind of lack. Like he really tried to get one into the end zone, came pretty close. Andre Iosivas got his touchdown.
4 touchdowns for Iosivas. He's got like 15 catches this year.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
So they found a way to make it work. Obviously, it's against the Raiders defense. The Raiders offense, like I wrote down in the notes, they call plays like they don't know that their run game sucks. Like they got down into the tight red zone and were like, plow the ball right up the middle. And like, okay, but have you seen your game this year? Like hasn't typically worked out that well for you. Now the Bengals' run defense, and particularly their defensive line, is bad enough that you're like, oh, maybe this week it might actually work, and it did. But when it emerges that people on that side of the ball are fired after this game, it's like I get it.
Early on, I had serious. Look, Cincinnati is a more intriguing team for the discussion because they have a chance. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and a chance to make a run if they got into the playoffs. And an 11-play, 70-yard drive to kick things off for the Raiders, including a walk-in touchdown for Zamir White at the goal line, is like, oh, man, Cincinnati's defense again. They ended up playing much better after that. But, yeah, the Raiders, look, they're depleted, man. If they had Devontae Adams still, you'd look at the depth chart and say it's a pretty good receiving core. They don't have him anymore. Jacoby Myers is a good 2. Now he's the 1. Brock Bowers, we talked about, going to break all these rookie tight end records, but it's just not enough, this roster right now for the Raiders. So the offensive coaching staff gets fired, but what else are they going to do?
Right.
Run game's rough right now. So Bengals get the win. 41-24. Let's go another West versus North matchup. The Chargers get the win over the Cleveland Browns. Jameis gets his first loss as the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. 27-10. Chargers move to 5-3. Browns fall to 2-7. Jameis kept throwing the ball to the defense.
Yeah.
For the second straight week. This time it was caught more
And
often.
we tried to hammer this a bit coming out of last week.
Listen, we were overly positive. We were overly positive about Jameis Winston, and also brought up the fact that he could throw a bunch of interceptions
right.
as well.
But I did repeatedly make the point that just remember, as positive as this is, Jameis isn't good. It's an important point to make. He isn't good. And this game sort of reminded you that
he's a mid-tier, maybe lower mid-tier now, NFL quarterback.
Yes.
With high variance.
Lower mid-tier. I think that's accurate. That's the point.
I'm
So,
begging you really quick, and not to interrupt again, very rudely.
Yeah.
I'm just begging you to get off the black and white extremes of good and bad, and let's be a little more descriptive. Like Andres Pete,
if
below
I can't
average.
say no.
Jameis Winston,
no.
lower mid-tier.
I am perfectly prepared to operate within the layers of gray between black and white, but Andres Pete is bad. I'm not accepting that as an argument that there's an area of gray in the middle between good and bad that Andres Pete exists in. Andres Pete is bad. End of story. Jameis Winston is not outright bad, but he isn't good. That's my point. So as impressive and as optimistic and as good as the feels were coming out of last week, the point that was repeatedly raised is Jameis isn't a cure-all. It's not all fixed, because Jameis Winston is perfectly capable of having a game like this one, where he just doesn't make a ton of the big plays, and he makes quite a lot of bad plays. And if they're all caught by the Chargers, you're not going anywhere. And by the way, even that was then made worse by the fact that Cleveland's defense just kept breaking down. The first two Chargers touchdowns were complete and total coverage busts.
I tried to make this point that the 2-year Browns defense is a fascinating case study. Remember let's back it up really quick. In 2022, the Browns had one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And every week we would come in here raving about Myles Garrett. It was like the tungsten arm thing. Myles Garrett has 9 pressures and the rest of the Browns have 4, one of those things. And last year, they added all this talent on the defensive line, became one of the best team pass rushes in the NFL. They were very good statistically, but then they would have these games where they would just give up a whole bunch of 50-yard touchdowns and 60-yard touchdowns, and there was busted coverages left and right. And we're trying to describe this a few weeks ago. The EPA per play isn't that good for the Browns, but the success rate's outstanding, right? So play for play, the Browns are good. They just forget to cover people every now and again. They just forget to, cover every gap in the run game or whatever it is. This game felt like that too, right? Myles Garrett's getting home. He's got 3 sacks. And then they just, leave Quentin Johnston open for a 66-yarder. So the Browns defense, just too many general coverage busts or guys getting beaten in one-on-one coverage or whatever it might be. And it just showed up again. Because again, play for play, they made a lot of big plays. They were in the backfield a lot on Herbert. They sacked Herbert 6 times. They just kept, also giving up wide open plays as well.
With really basic plays as well. It's not like they were facing things that they'd never seen before. I mean, the first Palmer touchdown coverage bust, that looked like a basic cover 2, and the safety just only focused on one of the threats. It's I'll take the inside guy, somebody else deal with the outside guy, and nobody did. So he just walked in for a touchdown. They kept cutting to Jim Schwartz after each one of these breakdowns, and he's like, what the hell just happened? The defense coordinator is what?
Get to coach him better.
So you put those two things together, right? The Browns defense had multiple plays where it just didn't bother to cover key receivers, and the offense was Jameis-ified and had the downside of Jameis in a game against, admittedly a very good defense. You put those two things together and you don't have a particularly close game.
Yeah, look, the Chargers offense does look more explosive in recent weeks. They got the big run from J.K. Dobbins that had been missing. He finally, wasn't a 60-yarder, but he broke out for a big run or two. And Justin Herbert playing better football these last couple weeks. I think as he's been healthier, we're seeing him take better care of the ball and create
Yeah.
some of those big plays.
Cut out all the turnover-worthy plays that he
Yeah.
had earlier in the season.
Yeah, and also the dink and dunk aspect of it, right? There's just more explosive plays from Justin Herbert. I just want to check his.
Which is admittedly aided by complete and total coverage busts.
It is in this game. I'm just saying, like, the totality of the last 3 weeks, which includes a loss to the Cardinals, last week's game against the Saints, and then this week with the Browns. Herbert's definitely played a lot better.
Yeah, sure. But in this game in particular, like the numbers are going to be skewed by complete breakdowns.
But he's throwing the ball down the field a lot more these last few weeks, generally, compared to previous weeks, and Chargers offense does look a lot better. From a Browns perspective, and look, the Chargers pass defense, as we've said, it's been one of the best in the NFL this year. And I made the statement last week where the one Chargers fan who watches us took offense. I said the Broncos might be the team to challenge the Chiefs, or at least maybe not for the division title, but to be the best competitor in the West. I may have been sleeping on the Cardinals a little bit because I was disappointed in their Monday night loss to the Cardinals a couple weeks ago. But the Chargers in a one-game setting still have these pieces in place to play hardball, right? To run the ball, and they're not having that stat line from Herbert where it's like 16 of 24 for $130. Like, they're getting some explosive plays, whether it's coverage bust or not. They're getting some explosive plays. So now that balance is a little bit better on offense, and it's been one of the sneaky good defenses with Jesse Minter coming in calling the plays.
Yeah, it has. Did you see their little rugby play before the end of the first half?
It's one of my favorite things is when I go on like I'm trying to bring something to the table here.
Yeah, you brought it.
I brought it.
Uh-huh.
And then you come back with, did you see the rugby play?
Yeah.
I'm over here. I'm trying to like put a bow on the Chargers,
You did.
and they're standing in the league,
Very
and how
nice
they're
bow.
are they the second best team in the AFC West? And then you come back with, did you see the rugby play?
It's a very nice bow you put on it.
Thank you.
Did you see the rugby play?
I did not.
Okay, they did a kind of pitchy woo woo, and so Quentin Johnston takes the ball, runs all the way to the right side, and then they ran like an end around almost. Josh Palmer, I don't even know if this was designed, but Palmer decides to double back on him, like basically at the sideline, just pitches it to him. Palmer comes all the way back to the other side of the field, and what makes it interesting is that Palmer actually executed a rugby pass. He lateraled it to somebody, and he didn't, Travis Kelce it, overarm, like football pass. He didn't option mechanics it. It was rugby mechanics. He gave a rugby pass to Ladd McConkey, I think. Now, it wasn't all good because whilst the rugby pass itself was good, he neglected to straighten the line, draw the last man in. Now, it wasn't even the last man. There's like 3 other guys who would have tackled him, but still, steps in the right direction, right? We've executed basic rugby passing mechanics. Now we just need to work on, okay, stop running side to side because you're drawing all the defense with you. You got to straighten the line, go north to south, then offload it outside you. But this is a step in the right direction.
That's Sam Monson at the33team.com, available for rugby consultation for your team. If you're looking for an end-of-the-game play that does not involve Zeke Elliott getting pancaked and a play going to nowhere, Sam can help.
Yeah.
He can help with all rugby plays, both within the flow of the game and also at end-of-half situations.
Yeah, this was a big
Is
step
that a good?
in the right direction. Big step, but we still have a couple more things we need to iron out before we get the perfect rugby play.
Were there any other? Were there any other specific rugby plays around the league that you just want to roll
No, that
into
was it this week, I think.
segment?
No, that was it this week, I believe.
Anything else on this football game before we get to the Ravens?
No, I think that's it.
All right, and also before we get to the Ravens, everybody knows, hey, we're with 33 Team right now, but we used to be with PFF,
Indeed.
right? For over a decade each, and PFF has you covered all season long with the best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Sign up for PFF Plus today to unlock all their famous player grades and premium stats. Push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with in-season tools and award-winning rankings from our old friend, fantasy expert Nathan Yankee, and stay connected to the next generation of talent with the best NFL draft coverage on the planet. No matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has what you need to make winning decisions. Visit PFF.com. Sign up today for less than $10 per month. PFF Plus, powering winning decisions. And I did notice our old friend Nathan made an announcement on the Twitter machine the other day that he is going full-time in fantasy now. So Nathan is full-time fantasy. He used to have his time split between fantasy, and he was one of my developers. We were a team when I was product managing over there. Nathan, full-time fantasy, so even more fun for his articles and all of his Twitter analysis and everything right now. So PFF Plus, go check it out at pff.com.
Nice.
So the Baltimore Ravens dominated once again over the Denver Broncos, 41-10. Ravens moved to 6-3 again. It's a powerful 6-3. Oh, they're the best 6-3 team in history. Very close to being 9-0, 8-1. Broncos fall to 5-4, but the Ravens with another statement against the Broncos, who are a playoff caliber team in the AFC so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, this was impressive. Like, another one of those games where you're kind of talking yourself into this could be, a pretty close game. This is a tough test, and then Baltimore just absolutely annihilates Denver. And it didn't even necessarily all go their way early. Like, yeah, they got the instant sort of tipped interception from Bo Nix, but Denver's defense stood up on that drive. Like, they backed them up from that point. Actually, they didn't get any points out of that. They missed the field goal, right? Or they knocked them out of field goal range. But then from that point on, like, I don't know how deep into the game it went before Lamar Jackson actually threw an incompletion, but it was pretty deep. He ends up with a perfect passer rating, his 4th of his NFL career, which ties a record. You know who the other person is?
Was it Breeze?
No.
Thought I had it.
You got to think there's a certain type of box score. You're a box scoreigami. There's a certain type of box score you need generally to get a perfect passer rating. So it needs to be very efficient.
It's going to be
reasonably
usually
low
attempts. Low attempts.
Right. So who would that bring up in terms of
Russ?
high-end all-time quarterbacks? No, right idea, though. Ish.
Who
Roethlisberger.
Oh, Roethlisberger, yeah.
Roethlisberger also has 4 perfect passer
See, I still
rating
see him
games.
as a high-volume guy because
of the end.
Because he morphed into that at one point.
The first half of his career was very much of this style.
Yeah, this is one of those Lamar games. And he's 16 of 19. I think one pass was thrown away. One was like a questionable. There was 2 technical drops. One was kind of like underthrown a little bit, but uber efficient game from Lamar Jackson. I think his official stat line, 16 of 19 for 280. That's almost 15 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He got sacked once for that 11 yards that took them out of field goal range. Was it in that one? But man, we're seeing different types of throws too. I think you've got an in rhythm wheel route to Justice Hill. There's a few more hit the top. He had an in rhythm seam. You don't see a ton of those, like hit the top of your drop and not just hit like a little quick out, but like drive the ball down the field or touch pass down the field. We're seeing more of those from Lamar the last couple of weeks. And you know me, I think I'm all about diversity of your offense, right? Diversification of the offense, different ways to win. And look, the Ravens didn't win the Super Bowl last year. It's not a failed season. They were the best team in the NFL in the regular season, losing the AFC Championship. But they took steps in that direction last year where every single week I always compared them to a pitcher who changes speeds and has everything in their arsenal, right? You've got yak players, you have downfield threats, you have Lamar the runner, who's as difficult to defend as any, one skill set in the NFL, and you had a good running game last year. Now you add even more to that. I think you're getting more in rhythm passes from Lamar Jackson the last couple weeks in particular, and you have the Derrick Henry factor, who's now scored a touchdown in every game as a Raven. 2 touchdowns in this game, 106 yards. The Ravens have all the answers. And in a game like this where all the answers are working, you put up 41, maybe could have put up more. And then in games where not everything's working, you still have something that's going to work. And that's what makes the Ravens so dangerous, is all these different ways that they can win offensively.
Yeah, I mean, this game was like a clinic. They put up a ton of points, had this insane efficient success against a good defense. Patrick Surtain was not targeted in this game, right? So they did all of this whilst avoiding effectively Denver's best player. Denver's pass rush has been, diverse, multiple, a ton of players involved in it. It barely factored in this game. It did right at the start where they stood up, they sacked Lamar Jackson, they knocked the Ravens out of field goal range. Outside of that, it really didn't make much of an impact whatsoever. So they did all of this whilst avoiding the 2 biggest threats that this Denver defense brings to the table, and then just went ham with everything else that they're able to do. Like, just a masterclass of absolutely picking apart what is a good high-level defense. I mean, when the Ravens play like this, they look like the best team in the NFL.
Also wanted to shout out Zay Flowers, who I thought last year I think he left a little something on the table, right? There was a lot of passes to nowhere to Zay Flowers. He had a good rookie season. Don't get me wrong. But this year, it's not like, hey, here's a little screen pass for 2 that he jukes 5 guys. That 53-yard touchdown, Zay Flowers outrunning he's just looks quicker, faster, and just like running after the catch with a better purpose this year, and also running a little bit better before routes, getting open a little bit cleaner down the field. I'm just really impressed with Zay Flowers this year relative to last year. I thought he was a good rookie season, and I know production-wise it's kind of been like a roller coaster ride for Zay, but overall, just a bigger play threat this year than he was last year, and I think that's been a huge part of this offense.
And that's the scary thing for the rest of the NFL as well, is that I think this offense can get better because Deontay Johnson, who they just traded for, barely featured in this game, right? He's only just arrived there. He ran like six routes, something like that. I think Deontay Johnson can unlock an even greater level of potential from Zay Flowers inside in the slot. If Deontay Johnson comes in, occupies a lot of those outside snaps, I think Zay Flowers can be really, really effective inside as a full-time player, or at least mostly there. And, this is the type of game that he can have if Deontay Johnson comes in and allows them to just focus on putting him there. Like, this offense could be even better. Like, Johnson should be the best route runner on this team. Johnson, Bateman outside, Zay Flowers in the slot, the 2 tight ends, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, Derrick Henry in the backfield, Lamar Jackson. Like, this offense can get even better than this.
So we get Thursday night football this week. Bengals, Ravens.
Yep.
On Thursday night. 2 highest graded quarterbacks by PFF, I believe, at the moment. 2 highest quarterbacks in ESPN's QBR.
The 2 quarterbacks that have thrown 5 touchdowns in a game this season.
2 QBs who have thrown 5 touchdowns. And it should be a great Thursday night football matchup. Ravens and Bengals. Also, it's funny how this happens sometimes. Like, we saw this on Thursday night in Baltimore last year. That was the game that Joe Burrow got hurt, and Jake Browning had to come in, for the rest of the season for Cincinnati. So I'm looking forward to that, obviously. Huge matchup in the AFC North. And look, I know the Steelers are 6-2 and technically in first in the North, but
yep.
Yeah, Baltimore's on pace again to look like one of the best, if not the best team in the NFL, the way they're dominating teams.
I thought Bo Nix played reasonably well in this game. However, one problem is that Bo Nix might be the best wide receiver on the Broncos roster based off yesterday. Phenomenal catch. To be fair, Cortland Sutton's a good player as well. But that was a good pass and an amazing catch by Bo Nix. But that first interception, right? Like, why are we still throwing the ball to little Jordan Humphrey? He's a pet project player for Sean Payton, and it's like, he's not good enough to be playing as a starting receiver in this offense. He just isn't. And if he is one of those players, that's like a giant red flag that says I need another one of those, because that's not going to cut it.
Passes to QBs are funny because it's like when you design it, you're hoping you completely trick the defense.
Yeah, and he's wide open.
Open.
Lands in his hands.
On Thursday night, we saw like a contested catch opportunity for C.J. Stroud. It's like, oh, let's just chuck it up to C.J. Stroud in tight coverage. It's like, no, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Bobby missed on this one. It didn't work. Just throw it away. But a contested catch by Bo Nix, like you don't see that. But Nick's really
amazing
impressive.
Adjustment. Yeah. Like, had to adjust back to it, making contested catch, and then on the way down, contort himself back across the goal line to make sure that he actually scored.
Yeah, and that's also one of those, like, if he gets hurt on that play or something, you're just like, wow, that's a questionable decision.
Right.
Like Stafford last year diving for the goal line with a bad thumb.
Yeah.
On his play.
Well, that questionable decision plus the questionable decision to throw the ball to your quarterback with a bust.
Carolina Panthers get the win over the New Orleans Saints. 23-22, Carolina's first win since week 3. Bryce Young leads his first game-winning drive, I believe it was. Somebody saw it. I didn't fact-check it. It was a very good game-winning drive, though, for Bryce Young and the Panthers. And as we mentioned on the live show last night, don't read the stat line, 16 of 26 for 171, a touchdown and a pick, a passer rating of 77.6. Don't read that and say just another Bryce Young game. This was his best game as a pro. Throw for throw, comfort level, confidence-wise. Really nice job by Bryce Young, and the 7th straight loss for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, so this apparently was only the second time in the last 2 years. So during the Bryce Young era, if you like, where the Panthers have held the lead in the fourth quarter. For the only other time was the Andy Dalton, the Raiders game, right, where he showed up and everything was fixed. Josh Dubow from the AP. This is the second time in the last 2 seasons that the Panthers have even held the lead for a single play in the fourth quarter.
Oh, you reminded me, Josh Dubow. I promised Josh, he's great Twitter anecdotes.
Yeah,
Josh
he's a
might
really
get
good follow.
And he's a loyal listener of the show.
Uh-huh.
And if he's not a loyal listener of the show, he won't hear that. But I think he is. He's pretty close.
I mean,
to
he was.
He was
still
before.
is.
Yeah. Maybe we lost him. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I promised he's got all sorts of Raiders tweets that I forgot.
Yeah. But that's
He
how
deserves
bad,
his own section on the show for just
like the
great
Austin
stats.
Gale misery hour.
Yeah. The Austin Gale misery hour.
That's how bad things have been for Carolina. This is only the second time since Bryce Young got there that they've even held the lead in the fourth quarter, let alone winning the game. Just been ahead at any point.
Can I go backwards out of order here? Get some of Josh's tweets in here.
I mean, I'm not going to stop you.
It's so the Raiders. Going back to the Raiders, just insert this into the Raiders section. In their last 5 games, per Josh Dubow AP, 4 touchdowns on 5 opening drives, and then 4 touchdowns on 50 other drives for the Raiders. And then the other one, where's the Carr one? I'm already blocked by the Carr, so I'm not going to lose anything.
The Carr one's funny.
The Carr one is funny. Some of the stats, which are like most X through 1 season, through 2 seasons, through 3 seasons. Those are fun.
Yeah.
So this is a good one, per Josh, because I asked for great stats from yesterday's games, and he came up with this one. So he gets his time here on the show. Most losses as a starting quarterback through 4 seasons. David Carr of the Texans, 43. Through 5 seasons, also David Carr with 53, and through 6 seasons, David Carr with 56.
That makes sense.
With the most losses through 7 seasons, it's Derek Carr.
Yikes.
With 63. 8 seasons, 70. 9 seasons, 79. This is all Derek Carr. Most losses through 10 seasons, Derek Carr with 87. And now most losses through 11 seasons, because we're talking Saints here. Derek Carr and Archie Manning tied with 91, which I believe implies Derek Carr has plenty of time to give himself this record all by himself.
Well, yeah, I mean, quarterbacks last longer now than they used to.
No, but I'm saying, like, we're still in season 11 here for Derek Carr.
Oh, and he's tied.
So
You're
he's
saying
tied.
He'll get a lot more losses.
He'll probably have the record.
Break the tie with Archie.
Yes, with most losses through 11 seasons. I just thought that was interesting.
Now,
I mean, if I've got 4 sons, if 2 of my sons were NFL quarterbacks who set these records, I'd be proud.
You'd be proud with this record.
I'm blocked. It's okay. I could say
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I'm gonna lean towards. I'm not blocked, so I'm gonna make this your fault. But you have said previously that you believe that there's actually something to QB wins. It's directionally accurate. So what you have effectively said, based off your previous comments, if you're going to be consistent, is that the Carrs genetically are born losers.
I may have implied that if you piece together, very politicianly of you, if you piece together something I said like 5 weeks ago,
right,
and something I just said right now in a stat, and you put those things together,
the logical
and then you come to a conclusion and say, Steve says the Carrs are losers.
Yeah,
that's really 'tis the season for such things. For taking all the stuff that I said and putting it together and say Steve thinks the Carrs are losers.
Yeah,
that's not true.
Well,
that's not true.
It's not,
because he has a lot of wins too. He's a lot of wins. What's his overall? I mean, while we're looking at QB rate.
I mean, it can't be that good if he leads NFL history in losses.
It's got to be close to 500, right? It's not that close to it because the rookie season was rough. It's close to 500. Oh, it's not that close. Derek Carr's 74-91.
Yeah.
Now.
That's not great.
Yeah, but it's not like the worst. It also shows his durability.
Does it?
And opportunity. Durability and opportunity. You got to be out there a lot. To have all those losses, you got to be out there.
He's like fresh off the back and missing a bunch of games with an oblique injury.
He had been durable until that point.
Okay.
15-plus starts in every year.
Yeah.
Until
Except
this year.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was fun.
I mean, it's certainly fun.
Josh has all sorts of fun stats.
Anyway, Carolina.
I want to talk Bryce Young.
Yeah.
It was the best he's looked.
Yes.
And his 2 best throws, I called them. One was a deep crosser, and another little stop and go. Put them right on his receiver's hands. David Moore dropped one, and the other one Xavier Legette just has it taken away for an interception.
I honestly think that one was bad enough that I think you can make an argument that that's a fumble, not even an interception. It's in his hands. He's caught it by the time the defender just takes it away from him. That should go down as a completion for Bryce Young and a fumble for Xavier Legette.
I don't know how many yards were left on the table, but again, just to paint a picture, if you give him 60 more yards, right? Those would have been 30 plus. Give him 60 more yards. He's 8 in 2 completions on those 2 passes.
And take away his interception.
He's 18 of 26 for 230 and a touchdown and no interceptions. And it's a much cleaner outing. But even just throw for throw from Bryce Young, by far the best we've seen from him, including on the final drive, man. What was a struggle for Bryce Young was seeing the middle of the field and seeing things on time, generally. He was so decisive yesterday.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not saying he's a future Pro Bowler right now or a future All-Pro, but he was so decisive yesterday. Hit the top of his drop and got rid of it. Even some simple checkdowns where he's canceling 2 and 3 deep routes and getting to the checkdown quickly was very impressive. But the most impressive throw for me is 3rd and 10 on the final drive, a dig route where he throws the ball so early, well before the break, the anticipation dig route.
Which was his college staple.
What he did. Now, I had to go back. I watched it on coach's film, and he throws it so early. I could not believe he saw that and threw it as early as he did. It looks like a completely different quarterback the way he did that. And then I went back to watch the broadcast version, and I didn't realize, because you can't see it from the coach's film, but on the broadcast version, it was like a late career Peyton Manning little wobbler. It was very wobbly. It wasn't like a zip in there, but the anticipation made it happen. And there was also a pass interference that helped set up the game-winning touchdown. But it was outstanding, this throw, and other throws by Bryce Young. It was by far his best outing.
Yeah.
And the feel, the comfort, the confidence, night and day from what we saw earlier this year from Bryce Young.
Correct. I also want to give some credit to Dave Canales. Remember, we were coming into the season, there was quite a lot of optimism about Carolina because, look, last year, dumpster fire. But people got fired off the back of that, and then this offseason they fixed every area that you could fix around the quarterback. Theoretically, they improved the receiving core, they improved the offensive line, they improved the coaching by bringing in a guy in Canales who just had recent success with Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith and resuscitating the careers of quarterbacks. We saw none of that in the first couple of weeks. It looked terrible. It looked worse than it did last year. It's like, well, none of this worked. Then they benched Bryce Young. Dalton comes in. It looks immediately better. And suddenly, actually, the offensive line is really good. The receiving core may be better. And let's put a pin in the coaching thing. This, though, we saw a game plan in this game that indicated that Canales had actually seen Bryce Young play, right? Which you hadn't seen in the first couple of weeks. There was no real indication that I have watched this guy play. I understand the way he's trying to play the game, and I have crafted a system to help him along with that. One of the things that Bryce Young has been doing for a while as a starter now is just panicking and abandoning pockets, right? Like trying to get the hell out from even when pressure isn't there, just trying to get out from that like contained pocket environment, whatever the reason. So in this game, you saw a ton of plays where they deliberately moved the pocket on him. They like specifically got him away from the inside of that trapped environment and like swung the whole pocket to the right? Or, use play action that would sort of the entire offensive line swings in one direction. A guy comes across just to pick up that backside defensive end. But the point is, what has previously been like a giant wall in front of Bryce Young in a complete semicircle that he can't see over. Now suddenly you've shifted most of that wall to one side, and there's only one guy over here that needs to see past. It just felt like this was actually, now they've got him on the move by design, right? Yeah. And he's not panicking, running for his life, trying to make an ad-lib play and figure out something on the fly. It's like, no, this is the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be moving in this direction. That's where you're making the read as part of the design play, and the whole thing was working better in partnership, right? That was encouraging because, number one, Bryce Young evidently was a lot more comfortable in that scenario. Number two, it indicates that the coach has a better understanding of what the deal is with this guy, and we might be able to go somewhere going forward. Now, as we said yesterday on the instant reaction show, we have to at least throw out the caveat that the Saints defense has become the Panthers defense with everybody banged up and injured, and the fact that they're 7 straight losses and they're spiraling out of control, and they might now belong in the caveat world of, yeah, but it was against the Saints.
Yeah, so that part I agree with. The Saints have been awful in recent weeks. I agree with how you're saying they called the game in favor of Bryce Young. But it's not like he put up this incredible stat. Like, we're not saying, oh, he just threw for 303 touchdowns, therefore he's arrived.
Right.
We're watching the film and saying this looks nothing like he looked last year or earlier this year. Even just and I'm talking little plays. The fact a 2-yard check down to me was like, wow, thumbs up, step in the right direction because you were decisive. Hitting the top of his drop and hitting a seam route on 3rd and 4, decisive. Hit his touchdown, top of the drop, little short post in the red zone, decisive. A 9-yard run on 2nd and 8 from Bryce Young, where he scrambles out, jukes a guy at the last second, picks up the first down. I'm not saying those things didn't exist last year in isolation, but they didn't exist in like a 1-game setting where you saw the confidence, you saw the pocket movement. He was only sacked 1 time, right? And he didn't have much of a chance there. And again, he wasn't perfect, right? He had a decisive turnover-worthy play too, where he didn't see the undercutting corner, and he probably should have thrown a pick. Missed a wide receiver screen, running back screen by a mile. He wasn't perfect. Decisiveness, confidence, and general anticipation, athleticism from Bryce Young all showed up in the same football game. It's a massive step forward for him in his development.
And there were genuinely plays in that tape yesterday that I haven't seen since Alabama. Like the type of, because it's not like everybody was like people knew he was tiny. It's not like that was a surprise. Oh, they've measured him. It turns out he's incredibly small and this isn't going to work anymore. Like everyone knew he was really, really small in Alabama, but it didn't matter because his anticipation was better. Like the throws you've been talking about earlier, right? Tua's the sort of typical Tua play, right? Throwing it to a spot on a dig route over the middle, and then look, Tyreek Hill shows up right when the ball arrives, right? Bryce Young was better at that at Alabama in the same offense than Tua was. He was better at it than Mac Jones was. He was the best of those quarterbacks at that anticipation, timing throw over the middle where typically short quarterbacks do not do well in.
Guys who are known for that.
That's why a ton of people in the same draft as C.J. Stroud and all these other quarterbacks were like, Bryce Young is the best guy because of this. It doesn't matter that he's really small because this anticipation stuff is elite high-level processing ability. And then that just disappeared the second he hit the NFL, right? Like everything overwhelmed him. He was drowning. None of it worked. It all went. It hasn't been on his tape so far. This was the first game, I think, where that was back in his tape, at least on a repeatable basis. And that, even if it's against the Saints defense, is a very notable development, whether it's for Carolina, whether it's for the team they're going to trade him to. It's at least the first sign in a long time that he might actually work as an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, we said a lot to say, step in the right direction there for Bryce Young.
Yeah.
I'm still going to cite this stat because on the other side, Bill Barnwell has a stat. The Saints outgained the Panthers by 150 yards.
Yep.
Ran for 150 plus and won the turnover battle. Over the last 20 years, teams had gone 275-0 with that formula. And now they lost. First loss with that combination of things for the Saints. So it wasn't like the Panthers dominated. They did get a semblance of a pass rush, Carolina. But again, the Saints in a sad spot right now.
Yeah, and one more thing that adds to that. Chris Olave was knocked out of this game with one of those kill shots over the middle that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
He's now entering Tua territory of really worrying concussion history. That's his second confirmed diagnosed concussion in a couple of weeks. In between those two, he was assessed for a concussion. Like the game that he came back in last week, I think, his head hit the turf. They were looking at him for a concussion. He ended up clearing him. He comes back in the game. So that's like a series of significant blows to the head in a pretty short period of time. I would assume that he gets stood down for a period of time after this game because I think it's his 5th diagnosed concussion since he came into the NFL for a really talented receiver and obviously a really important player to that Saints team. Do you see the Michael Thomas tweets? Like that hit to Olave caused Michael Thomas to lose his mind on Twitter and start going off against the Cars, the Derek Carr in particular.
Oh, geez.
Just had a series of insane tweets. There you go.
Oh, boy.
So, yeah, unfortunately, pass across the middle led Chris Olave into the kill shot, and that dude took another concussion off the back of it.
Michael Thomas definitely been blocked by the Carr brothers.
Well, if he wasn't before, I'm pretty sure he would be now.
That's Darren Carr, by the way, who historically runs the Twitter account.
Oh, he does the blocking? He's
blocks people.
The policeman?
Well, David and Derek are the two quarterbacks with all the losses, and Darren is the guy who blocks everybody on Twitter for highlighting all those losses.
Okay.
That's how it
Got it.
works. Last thing I'll say about this game. Saints, maybe sellers at the trade deadline. Rumors about Marshawn Lattimore at corner. We'll see what happens there. But 7 straight losses in a rough spot. Let's go. Atlanta Falcons get the win over the Dallas Cowboys. What was that score? 27-20? 27-21. I just lost track of it again. Atlanta's won 5 out of their last 6. They moved to 6-3. And Cowboys fall to 3-5. Dak Prescott left the game with a hamstring injury. He said something happened to his hamstring that's never happened before. Loosely quoting there.
Okay.
He was being checked for a hand. The broadcast theorized it could have been his hand. Turns out it was his hamstring. So we saw some Cooper Rush down the stretch there. We also had a bit of a scare for CeeDee Lamb. AC joint, landed on it rough. Did come back into the game, but something to keep an eye on in the coming weeks. And Atlanta, the Bucs play tonight, but Atlanta taking a commanding lead now in the NFC South with a 6-3 record.
Yeah, they look good again.
They did.
And Dallas did not.
Bijan Robinson is becoming one of my hashtag fun to watch plays. I mean, he's always been, but called him an artist a couple weeks ago.
Save that. Put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that later today.
Bijan?
No, the artist. Just
the
remember
artist.
that you used that. We're coming back to that.
Okay.
Trust me.
I just love watching Bijan play. Five first downs on the ground, 4 through the air. Just such a smooth runner. And it wasn't the dominant run game performance that the Cowboys have given up this year.
Right.
But one of those effective, we're getting 5, we're getting 7, we're getting 8 from the Atlanta offense. And a very efficient Kirk Cousins outing, finishing 19 of 24 for 222, 3 scores.
Particularly late in the game, they were able to kind of, it's another one of those games. Dallas is threatening a comeback, and Atlanta was able to kind of salt away the win because they were able to run the ball later on when they wanted to chew that clock. That definitely helped. Bijan's ability to make a guy miss just effortlessly in space is insane. Like his at full speed, or it's almost a guarantee that he's going to make the first guy grasp at air and not touch him. Like it's crazy how good he is at that. But yeah, Bijan was good, particularly through the air. He made some ridiculously good plays. Drake London got the early touchdown. They threw him normally I hate the end zone fade. If there's one guy I'd be kind of okay with taking a shot at, it's Drake London, who's insane at those. Like his ability to box out and just go up and he might be. We talked about George Pickens being the best contested catch receiver in the NFL. Drake London might be the best sort of jump ball guy in the NFL.
You know who really is the best contested catch guy? Is Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
It's really Justin Jefferson.
Probably.
He doesn't have as many opportunities because he's so open all the time,
right.
But he really is the best. Anyway, London with a beautiful up and
like a slot fade,
catch.
Just plucks that out of the air. Amazing play.
You also have they go for it on 4th and 3, and I'll just say it again. It's a long field goal opportunity that the Falcons turned down.
Right.
There's still, I mean, we're kind of old, but there's older than us men screaming at clouds about people. I gave up the points. I mean, what it would have been a 53-yard field goal. That's money in today's NFL.
Money.
That's money. But Kirk Cousins, instead, it becomes a 36-yard touchdown on a little pickish type of play to Darnell Mooney. But like I said it last week, Raheem Morris has had a decision or two per game in a bunch of games where it's a 4th and 3 here and there, and it's a low red zone. This is more like, it's on the borderline. It's in the gray area. But the 4th and 3 touchdown is a massive swing in this game in the second quarter to go up 14-3.
And this is also, I think, a great example in an individual game of how important the play calling, the play design, and the coaching is in those decisions, right? We've always said you have 2 different decisions when you're deciding, do you go for it or not on the 4th down? There's what do the numbers say, right? The analytics, the scary thing that Troy and Joe Buck hate. Like, what do the numbers tell you to do? Go for it, no go, right? Binary decision, essentially, based off, marginal gains and win percentage points won or lost. Then there's, okay, the numbers say go. What's your play for this scenario? What's your play for 4th and 1, 4th and 3, whatever? What do you want to go for it with, right? So in this game, you had Atlanta, who goes for the 4th and 3, gets it, good play design, reasonably high percentage thing, works out great for them. And then you have Dallas going for it on a series of 4th down plays and just a clown show from start to finish, like ridiculous things that they're doing, including throwing a pass on a fake punt, where punts, you can't be done for defensive pass interference on a punt, which is why most fake punts are not passes, because the guy can just get mugged and it's not a penalty. So the intended receiver is tossed to the ground, and the vice guy, the corner, actually ends up dropping what would have been a pick six. But these are bad play calls to be going for it on 4th down.
The other one was the failed jet sweep.
Yes.
To CD Lamb, which
right.
I think the play call's fine on that. It just didn't work.
Maybe. I mean, generally,
Caden Ellis, unbelievable play.
These sort of lateral runs on 4th and short, I don't know, are great moves. But anyway, Dallas on 4th down in this game was they had 12 men. They had 12 men on the field for a field goal.
They had 12 men on the field when they wanted to go for it. They had the fake punt, as you mentioned,
right,
which was awful, and they got stopped on a jet sweep.
Those
things add up to this is a big reason why you lost.
They were 0 for 3 on 4th down. At one point, they were 0 for 6 on 3rd down. And I think at least 2 of those 3 calls were, coaching failures, right? Deciding to fake punt with a pass where a guy can just get mugged, having 12 men on the field. These are coaching breakdowns. We can debate whether or not the CD Lamb thing was a good call or not, but my point being, on at least 2 of the 3 failures on 4th down, you can point directly to coaching and say that's a screw up, whereas Atlanta goes for it on 4th and 3 and dials up a good play and it works and everything's good. So you have this world where not only are you deciding, is it worth going for it on 4th down or not? It's are you capable of going for these plays or not? Which is a factor.
Yeah, those were absolutely huge plays in this game. And so the failed jet sweep, Falcons make the stop, and then a few plays later, they go for the 4th and 3, get the long touchdown to Darnell Mooney. The other touchdown, Kirk Cousins to Ray McLeod, clean, pristine pocket. Look, the Cowboys are 3-5, and there's a lot of issues, but they've been playing, with one hand tied behind their back as far as pass rush goes, based off how they built this team. Micah Parsons to Marcus Lawrence. So the Darnell Mooney touchdown, they go all-out blitz, can't cover on the back ends. Then they go 4-man rush, and Cousins has a pristine pocket to sit there forever, wait for Ray McLeod to clear and hit him. So Dallas has multiple options, and Atlanta, really nice job taking advantage of those issues that Dallas has defensively. Yeah. One more thing I wanted to highlight. I stumbled into Dan Orlovsky video.
Oh, yeah?
They threw a little swing screen to Bijan Robinson, and Dano was breaking down. He's like, so the safety's calling for somebody to adjust to the motion with Bijan,
right?
And no one moved because they had 10 men on the field. And so from a Dallas perspective, they have 10 men on the field on a key 3rd down to Bijan.
Really early in the game.
The second 3rd down of the game.
Right.
They have 12 men on the field for a key offensive play. They have a fake punt. Everything is just losing football. They're playing losing football.
Details. Details, and when you start criticizing details on a regular basis, that generally is a coaching failure. Ultimately he's responsible for the details, right? If the details are consistently being missed, whose responsibility is that?
If Jerry gets the wrong mint julep, if it's just not made the right way, if the details aren't there in the mint julep, do you think that
who's responsible?
Whoever made it.
Right.
Whoever's making the drink. Right?
Or at least,
Do you think is he going back to the same
overseeing
bartender?
The bar, overseeing the catering.
Oh.
Ultimately the buck stops somewhere.
Is he firing that caterer?
Somebody's getting fired. Damn it. Oh, yeah. Shout out to Carl Lawson. As you said, Dallas's pass rush without Micah Parsons has been pretty bad. And it was still pretty bad in this game. But Carl Lawson had a very Carl Lawson game, actually, where he didn't have his win percentage is not going to be particularly good, but the wins that he got were decisive good and got sacks out of them. This was sort of a throwback to when Carl Lawson was a really productive sack artist with plays like this, and then injuries had hit, and we hadn't really seen that guy for a long time. But it was I felt good for him seeing him show up and make a couple of plays.
Just to reiterate from a standings perspective, the Falcons being 6-3, Bucs are their top contender. They've got the 2-win tiebreaker over the Bucs. The Falcons are putting some distance between them and the Bucs, who have to play Kansas City tonight, the Niners next week. So pivotal few weeks here for the NFC South race, and the Falcons looking really good right now.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cowboys,
not so much.
Eagles next week, then the Texans and Commanders. So some 3 tough games against winning teams, and Dak Prescott with a hamstring injury.
Dak Prescott with a hamstring injury. CeeDee Lamb with his AC joint that looked really bad when he first did it. He got up like clutching his shoulder immediately, having dive for a ball in the end zone. I would suggest that his availability is kind of tied to Dak Prescott's availability. If you're CeeDee Lamb, I don't know how keen you're going to be to battle through the shoulder injury with Cooper Rush as your quarterback versus Dak Prescott. Meanwhile, Jerry's out here saying he still has total confidence in everybody in the building, including the coaches. Like, I don't know. It's not good for Dallas.
Cancel the stadium tours. We're in panic time in Dallas.
No. Double them.
Double the tours.
More tours. Tours for everybody. Compulsory tours.
Make more money for the team. Anything else on this game? When are you going to bring up the artist thing? When do I need to remind you on that?
You don't need to remind me. I got it.
You'll know. Okay. Washington Commanders 27, New York Giants 22. Commanders move to 7-2 on the season. Giants fall to 2-7. One of the 7 teams, or is it 9 teams now that have 2 wins?
It feels like a number you should have if you're going to throw that data point out.
It felt like a parity type season, and then all the teams that didn't have a lot of wins continued to lose. So now it's a bunch of 2-win teams here after week 9. Commanders took care of business, man.
They did.
Discuss.
They took care of business. They got closer than I think it probably should have been, but they did successfully take care of business.
The Giants don't get blown out a ton, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Eagles a few weeks ago was a train wreck, but they've been playing tough. They almost got back in this, and they did the whole people hate when you go for 2 early, and they did that a couple times.
Some people certainly do. And yeah, this was another pretty good Daniel Jones game. So really this season, or at least for the last while, if they've been viable on the offensive line, like if that group has been able to hold up just enough, they've been pretty good on offense. Like Daniel Jones has played pretty efficient football. They've got playmakers in Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy, and like they can do some damage. And that's sort of where this game ended up. Now, it wasn't enough because Washington's offense is really good and the Giants' defense isn't necessarily, but they are viable. Like as long as you don't show up with a guy that can completely destroy their offensive line, they're able to kind of hang in there.
It's going to be interesting with the Giants. Theo Johnson with a big touchdown seam route that kind of that's what got the Giants back in it. Theo Johnson was one of the big frame, athletic tight end. I'm just looking ahead here.
I mean, we said this last week, right? Look at their rookie class this year. It looks really good. You've got Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, Theo Johnson. These are 3 players that could be cornerstone pieces of that offense. On defense, you've got Andrew Phillips, Tyler Newbin, the safety, who's been good. Like this is a group that could kind of rescue this team.
They have some playmakers for Aaron Rodgers when he takes over next year.
For Aaron Rodgers, that's where we're going after this.
Who knows, maybe it'll work across town in the same building across divisions.
Would he bring Devontae with him?
Yeah, and so if you add Devontae Adams to Malik Neighbors, Theo Johnson, Wandale, you got something there.
You got something.
I am at this point where I'm picturing, it's not a bad foundation for the next QB to throw to, knowing what we know now about Tyrone Tracy and about Theo Johnson and, of course, about Malik Neighbors.
So that's where it becomes really interesting, right? This dynamic of Joe Shea and you, like, don't judge a guy by the quarterback decision. Like, clearly mistakes have been made with that team, but if this draft class is actually as good as it looks right now, and we're still in the world of really small sample sizes, right? But if this draft class ends up being one of those defining draft classes like the Saints had ages ago, like the Seahawks had, the Chiefs have had these. If this draft class ends up being one of those, like how much credit does that put in Joe Shane's bank? Is it even enough to save his job if the season sort of continues to unravel from a wins and losses point of view?
It certainly helps, but it's like, man, they also lost a lot of good players since he's taken over, right? It kind of replaces some of them and gets them a little bit younger. So, yeah, it's an intriguing spot with the Giants, and I will continue to hammer home my don't judge the GM by just the QB decisions take on that. So, we're being positive about the Giants here.
Yeah, well, I'd be more positive. Yes. We had Irish representation in this game. Did you see this?
I didn't see the rugby plays, and I didn't catch, while I was watching 8 football games at the same time, the Irish representation in this game. No.
Jude McAtamney, the kicker.
Jude. Oh, Jude. I thought his name was Dude.
No. From Derry. He was a minor Gaelic footballer, I believe.
Derry, New Hampshire?
No.
Oh.
Derry.
It's fun when you name a town from over there, and I'm like, oh, we've got one of those in New
You
England.
stole it and renamed some other random patch of land that.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I believe he's a minor Gaelic footballer. He got elevated. He was the kicker in this game.
For who?
The Giants.
Oh, good.
Wearing 99, I think, which is like a college kicker number, where those guys just get handed a number at the end of the roster.
I was number 98.
Yeah. And it worked out really well
when I was with the San Francisco Giants for 2 days.
Is it work the same? Is that indicative of your spot in that roster?
Kind of. Yeah. I was not on the spring training roster. They literally had a whole bunch of jerseys on hangers with no names on the back. And it was like, you're on the major league team today. Pick a jersey.
You got 98.
And so I got number 98 back-to-back days.
How many people are on a baseball roster?
Less than 98.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 40 in spring training.
Right.
And then the people that they call up from spring training. So you could have as many as 50 or 60. But I just had this rotating jersey.
But it's like
when I was a major leaguer in spring training.
In Premier League soccer, for example, right? Like there's 25 people or something in the first team squad, and they're all numbered generally 1 to 25. But then the youth players that are eligible to play, but are buried because they play with the under 18s or whatever. Those guys sometimes get elevated, and they'll have numbers of 67, right? Because that represents effectively your standing in this squad. And then, oh, look, there's number 67 playing in this game. And sometimes they keep the number, for the whole time.
I would have kept
it. Yeah. But it's like, that's sort of, this guy is basically from the youth team that we've promoted into this game. He doesn't generally belong at this level. You were 98 in a
I would have kept. If I had ever gotten called up, I would have requested 98.
Okay.
All of my teammates who got called up ended up wearing number 43 for some reason. I don't know why. That was like, here, you get number 43.
Anyway, apparently Jude McAtamney scored the first points from an Irish person in the NFL since the 1970s or something.
That is impressive. Are you still the most famous Irishman in NFL circles?
Well, not anymore. I mean, he's got to be up there.
Jude's up there.
He's
going to take over.
Daniel Whelan, the Packers punter.
Oh yeah, your old hat.
Charlie Smith is sitting there on the Saints practice squad. I mean, there's just it's a kick an avalanche of people.
Your old hat. Jaden Daniels, another super efficient game. Not exactly a Lamar, but a Jaden. 15 of 22 for 209, 2 touchdowns, no picks. When I was asking for big-time stats, BTS. Big-time stats coming out of the game, somebody highlighted this to me, John Keim, according to Elias. Elias has some good data. Washington's 3 turnovers are the fewest by a team in the first 9 games of a season since 1933, which is... I believe the first year of the Major League All-Star game and the first year that turnovers were tracked.
The first Major time League turnovers baseball. Are tracked was 1933.
Yeah. Huh. So the Washington team, the Commanders, I almost called them the Washington football team, but not as their name, but just the football team from Washington. The Commanders are the least likely team to turn the ball over through 9 games.
Ever. Nice.
And they have a rookie quarterback.
Also, as long as we're Giants positivity, that was Daniel Jones' first touchdown pass at home in 672 days. And they took a second one off the board from him. He scored a perfectly legitimate second touchdown to Wan'Dale Robinson. They took it off the board by an egregious offensive pass interference call. We're that's a pick play as a guy just wanders in a straight line off the line of scrimmage.
That's a long time. He also, trucked a dude for a touchdown too.
He trucked Mike Sandersdale for a touchdown.
Yeah. Daniel Jones played well, did some good stuff, and there's some intriguing things for the Giants. Again, I want to give the Commanders proper credit because they're a better team right now and showing it. Chris Rodriguez came in and was the running back who kind of second half ran really hard in the second half and 3 straight runs to seal the deal in the red zone to seal the game for Washington. He ran really well. Brandon Coleman, the rookie out of TCU, He had been rotating in and out of the lineup at left tackle. He gets the start, plays pretty much from start to finish, and he had a really good game too. And again, Jaden Daniels finds Terry McLaurin twice, a little slant in the end zone. Beautiful 18-yard touchdown pass over Deontay Banks as well. So just really efficient, really effective by Washington in this one.
The Brandon Coleman thing's interesting because you're right. They had been kind of rotating him in over the season, which is in and of itself pretty unusual. And the feeling has been that they're, trying to get him to be the starter at some point and trying to sort of ease his transition in there. This might be it now. Like he might be the left tackle. Nailed it down. You're the guy. And the offensive line has been good for Washington this season.
We're making good pace. We get 5 games left, about an hour and 10 minutes. I think we're in the right pacing.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got some big ones coming up, though.
We do. Just to touch on, I want to touch on Washington's schedule really quick, and then we'll get to the rest of the games. Steelers and Eagles the next 2 weeks here. So you're 6-2 Steelers coming off a bye, and then the Eagles. I believe is that Thursday Night Football? Looks like it's a short week, Thursday Night Football in Philadelphia. It's a huge 11 days, whatever that is, for Washington right now, sitting at 7-2 and really getting tested by the Pennsylvania teams, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, coming up.
Really getting tested by Pennsylvania.
That's correct. Got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And, if you've been following along, if you've been trailing me a little bit, maybe you've won a little bit so far. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CheckTheMic on Prize Picks. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's all guaranteed. So we've had a lot of fun here. It's the first time as a podcast we haven't won.
Our first collective failure.
Yes, where we both lost this week. But I was 4 yards away from Josh Allen getting over more than his projection. I did it for the first time in a long time. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. They got the Flex Play, which means you could still cash out your lineup if it isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with the injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half, doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. So again, download the app today. Use code CheckTheMic. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code CheckTheMic. Prize Picks. Run your game.
JJ in the chat wonders if in 1933, when they started counting turnovers for the first time, if people complained about football becoming dominated by the nerds.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are ruining the game by tracking these things.
You guys are just counting everything, and it's just really, really killing our vibes here. Just trying to enjoy some football. That was probably when the saying started. You pass the ball, and 3 things can happen only.
Right.
And 2 of them are bad. One of them's a turnover.
Uh-huh.
Jacksonville Jaguars and the Philadelphia Eagles. I thought this was going to fall apart for Philadelphia. They hold on to win 28-23. Eagles move to 6-2. Jags fall to 2-7.
If this collapse had happened, if they'd actually lost this game, would this game on its own have been reason enough to fire Nick Sirianni? Even though, even though they're actually in a pretty good spot, everything's going reasonably well for Philadelphia. Like based off last year plus this game.
No. We'll talk about it in a second, because I don't think all of his decision. Like I don't think he made bad. People are mad because he made analytical decisions that were, not by the book. There's other reasons why Nick Sirianni, you can question him as a head coach. I don't think it's the in-game decision making as much. But let's get to it.
Okay.
Already off the start, the Jags muff a punt. Eagles pick it up, score a touchdown right away. Jalen Hurts to Saquon Barkley.
To be fair, I don't think he muffed the punt as much as got annihilated by the coverage and then, fumbled the ball.
You described it better than me.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, I mean, there
was just a lot of weird plays.
I think he could have fair caught that and not taken the missile from the gunner.
So my point is, Jags shooting themselves in the foot, give up a touchdown.
Yeah.
Just before the half, we talked about this before, Saquon Barkley, 19-yard touchdown, untouched.
Yeah. 3rd and 17 on a draw play. And
Third
he's
and-
completely untouched.
Second time in 3 weeks we've seen that. That was Tennessee's score against Indy a couple weeks ago with Tony Pollard. I mean, this was ridiculous that the Jags gave this up. So impressive job, Saquon Barkley finding the end zone again. And then we'll talk about, like, it was a weird score, right? It was 22-0. Jags score a touchdown to make it 22-6. They go for 2, make it 22-8. And then Saquon Barkley fumbles. It looked like he should have been down by contact.
Yeah.
But the great running back / tight end Trayvon Walker picks it up, weaves through the defense.
Finally, we have unlocked the true athletic potential of Trayvon Walker. It turns out you take the greatest freak athlete the game has ever seen and assume that because of that, he'd be a great pass rusher.
No.
Actually, just give him the ball and let him go nuts. This is like, we've overthought this, right? Take it all the way back to high school. What do you do with the best athlete on the field?
Give him the ball.
Give him the damn ball and let him go make a play. Just, why have we been overthinking this? Give Trayvon Walker the ball and let him just run through everybody and score a touchdown.
Maybe Travis Hunter's been getting too much credit as this two-way player. He's merely the first one who tried. I mean, for years we said, hey, J.J. Watt, what if J.J. Watt was just a tight end? Like, imagine if he was a tight end. Is he Gronk? Is he close? Is he capable?
Remember the one time somebody spat the ball up and Aaron Donald picked it up and was like, oh my God, look at this.
Yeah.
Like Aaron Donald starts returning the ball like a running back. You're like, this could be amazing.
Give them more carries.
If you have an all-time freak defender, pass rusher, give that guy the football, right? None of this goal line carry with your like out of shape offensive guard trying to plow it in from a yard. Throw it to your freak show defensive tackle and let him go in. You think it was a coincidence that the refrigerator was a defensive tackle, not an offensive tackle? No.
Nope.
Give it to them. Give Trayvon Walker the football. I'm starting the campaign now. Give Trayvon Walker the ball.
I know it just failed a couple weeks ago. Or last week, the Bears handed it off to
a guard.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
You're right.
You think offensive linemen, those guys don't deserve the football. Defensive linemen. Now we're talking.
Anyway, it wasn't scoregami in this game, but I think the way you got there was scoregami.
Should have been.
Right? It was like 22-0, then 22-8. So it was just, there was so many of these decisions, right? So the Jags score a touchdown to make it 24-14. You're down 8. Is that what it was? Yeah, 24-14. And then they go for 2 to make it 22-16. And then, look, Jalen Hurts has been throwing the ball much better these last couple weeks. He hits Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith, what a catch.
That's the other catch I was trying to
talk about your boy.
Devontae Smith with a ridiculous one-handed catch that rivals the Garrett Wilson one-handed catch.
Kind of. But yeah, the footwork.
I mean, it's a different type of catch,
Yeah.
but it absolutely rivaled it. I mean, that was an absurd one-handed catch for a touchdown. And again, like, it's so insane how good wide receivers are at this now. Like that, any one of these catches would be like the greatest catch of a season in previous years, and now they're happening like on a weekly basis. Crazy play from him.
So every time the Eagles, like, all right, they're a better team. They pull away by 2 scores. The Jags are a little shorthanded without Christian Kirk. Brian Thomas Jr. at least played. But the Jags come back again, make it a 5-point game. Trevor Lawrence with his second rushing touchdown, this time a scramble. It's 28-23, and then the Jags get the ball back and have a chance to potentially win the game. And that's where it felt like, if you're an Eagles fan or if you're watching, this felt like a 2023 like collapse, like the entire season, how the entire season collapsed.
Right.
Blowing a 22-point lead, as you were saying, is this a fireable offense, right? Is this like job security type stuff? But Nakobe Dean with the game-ending interception to clinch it, and
amazing catch.
the Eagles.
He was a linebacker.
Yeah, it is. I don't want to take this one play and just like extrapolate it into Trevor Lawrence's entire career, but there's. When we would do PFF grading a lot, right? You really get to see the details a lot in the game, right? And running back, no offense to running backs, and maybe this is what makes Saquon Barkley so special. Running backs, they're not the best receivers, right? Like
it's almost verbatim. I think it was whichever McCourty does the games.
Yeah.
It was them. The McCourty was the guy. He's like, he literally said, no disrespect to the position.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't throw the ball at a running back.
I'm not trying to copy Jason. I think it was Jason, right? I'm not trying to copy McCourty. But you see that all the time. Like a poor QB throws a pick 6 because the running back is supposed to run like a little 5-yard hitch and he just fades to 6 yards and you give up a pick 6.
Yeah.
And so it's you're throwing a jump ball to a third string running back. And again, I'm not trying to extrapolate this over Trevor Lawrence's career, but it's like there's always there's like quirky decisions.
Yeah.
And it's not I just misread a linebacker and misread the coverage. It's this. Like with the game on the line, I'm going to throw a jump ball to a third string running back, and that comes back to bite.
Yeah. No disrespect to the position, but
yeah,
you don't take that shot.
You don't do that.
Look,
not on Nakobe Dean.
Right.
Either.
No. I mean, look, there's a lot of credit, I think, that you can give to the Eagles in various places and individuals. You know, Quinion Mitchell, Nakobe Dean with that ridiculous pick. Ed Reed Blankenship had another good game. Zach Bond had a great game. Linebacker for them, Jalen Carter was impressive. I, however, want to dedicate some time to talking about Saquon Barkley, right? So he might have a weird grade because that fumble ends up getting charged to him or downgraded to him at PFF.
Really quick.
That's questionable.
He was probably down by contact. Like he
probably
got touched, tripped over.
I think what they've determined on that replay, right? He definitely gets touched by a defender who like gets a hand to his calf or whatever, and then he trips up basically on the back of his own offensive lineman and goes to ground. And you're like, that looks like it should be down by contact, so therefore the ground can't cause the fumble play over. I think what they've determined is that the slap to the back of the calf wasn't enough to have taken him down, and actually he tripping on his own offensive lineman is what sent him to the ground. Therefore, it's not down by contact, it's live, and the ball comes out, it's his fumble. Anyway, regardless, that's the sort of negative play in here. On the other hand, on the positive side of the ledger, we have Saquon with another one of those ridiculous, like the plays you don't throw to running backs, right? Deep down the field, adjustment over the shoulder, makes a catch in the end zone. That's his second one of the season of those, where like there must be 5 plays like that in the NFL this year to running backs, and he's responsible for at least for 2 of them. Insane play. You've got the 3rd and 17. Oh, it's just a give up draw. Saquon takes it to the house, aided dramatically by Jacksonville's defense, just like caving in and not defending anything. Then you talked about artist before, right? Here is where you get the artwork. The play where he hurdles a guy backwards, right? You saw this, yes?
Yes, it's insane.
Not only is it insane, I believe that this play is the single most perfect play to have ever taken place in the NFL, right? Not the best play, but the single most perfect. It was artwork. You know, you hear sometimes about the perfect movie, 3 perfect acts all comes together to make a perfect movie, or a perfect song, right? Something that's just absolute perfection and artistry. On this play, Saquon Barkley, it's 3rd and 6, and they just give him a little dump off in the flat, right? Nothing. The nothing play. Saquon Barkley then immediately sidesteps a stiff like he's not even there, right? Boom, first guy made to miss. Then he spins around a second guy, and then he takes that into a backwards hurdle over a third guy, and then falls forward on the contact for additional yardage. It was like a gymnast routine, where everything just flowed into the next move, and it could not have been put together in a more perfect way. That was the perfect football play from Saquon.
That might be the most perfect explanation of the play.
That play.
Chop that. That's for social.
If, we're in a world now where you can clip videos and create holograms and stuff, like that play should be clipped, put in a hologram, and literally displayed in the Louvre. I mean it, seriously. That play, whatever 8 seconds of it, clip it up, turn it into a hologram, and project it into a room in the Louvre.
That's football right there.
Stick it right next to the Mona Lisa.
Describe that football to someone. Show the play.
That play is artwork.
So good. I love it. Well said. I had nothing else to add to that. When you leap backwards over someone, that is such an incredible, just instinctual play. Like, there's no way he's ever practiced that, right? You just do it. You just do it, but you know what you're capable of. You've leapt over people before.
Yeah.
Right?
Forwards.
You've spun before.
Right.
You press the 2 buttons at the same time. Right. You went circle, triangle at the same time. I don't know what they are now, but that's what they were 20 years ago. Circle, triangle. You combo moved it, and you leaped over a guy.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
But it was how the whole thing flowed as one like routine. like a gymnast routine. Like, here's my program that I'm going to put together. All these moves flow into each other. And at the end, I stick the landing, hands up, and everyone holds up perfect tens, right? That's what Saquon did. He leapt over a guy backwards, stuck the landing, fell forward for an extra 2 yards. All that was missing was 3 guys on the sideline holding up a 10. That's what that play was. It's nuts.
You're holding up an 11. You said it's perfect. It's beyond a 10.
Pretty sure perfect is 10, but okay.
Yeah, people throw 10s around too easily. Give him an 11.
Got it.
Well said. Again, just in totality. So A.J. Brown left with an injury.
Yep.
That's huge, obviously. I think he's the most important player on the Eagles. Saquon, much like Derrick Henry, though, showing in games like this what that cherry on the top is for an already good team. What does the cherry on the top look like? It's like you stole a free touchdown before the half. You steal touchdowns in the pass game because he is unbelievable at running routes and adjusting to passes, unlike most running backs. You just have extra ways to win. Because, again, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, the dudes. It's like anytime A.J. Brown's on a team, we call them the dudes, right? Who's surrounded with all these players, the dudes can make a lot of big plays. The stuff Nick Sirianni's getting potentially criticized for, they turned down an extra point. They had a good extra point. The Jags have a penalty, and the Eagles are like, we don't want the extra point. We want to go for 2 because you get it from the 1, and they didn't get it. And there was a lot of talk that like they were trying to do it to like go up 3 scores before. They're just trying to maximize points, right? Nobody's counting scores, I don't think, before the half. They're just trying to maximize points. And they minimized points instead. They took a point.
Yeah.
It was like the Texans, right? You took 3 points off the board to try to go for more, assuming, I'll get the 3 whenever I want. I'll get it later if I fail. And the Texans essentially took 3 points off the board. The Eagles essentially took a point off the board. They also had 2 failed 4th downs in this as well, which people hate because you're just passing up points. And the Eagles should have had 40 points or whatever.
And they abandoned the push play. That's been more vulnerable this year. They haven't been as automatic with it.
Jason Kelce.
Yeah.
The Jags did a good job.
It also, it reminds you just how ridiculous the hysteria was over that play. Like, there was, at the time, basically one team executing it at a really high level and nobody else. And people were like, got to ban it. It's unfair. You got to get it out of the game. It's breaking
play.
the league.
I mean, Matt Leinart and Reggie, but they called it the Bush push because he like illegally pushed Matt Leinart forward years ago and be like, we don't like this in football. And then the Eagles built a whole short yardage package off of it.
Yeah.
It's just stupid
but
play
only
pushing
then.
people forward.
And it turns out it is, in fact, defendable. It just wasn't at the time.
It is.
So the ridiculousness
But he started going wide
of
and
people.
It's fun when you have adjustments off of it.
Oh, they've had those, though, the whole way. It's
Yeah,
just
I
that
know.
now they're actually being forced into them as opposed to just taking advantage of it.
Anything else from an Eagles collapse standpoint that you wanted to highlight?
No, because
Was it as
didn't end
bad
up
as
collapsing.
Is it just that they lost, or is it the fact that you failed on 4th down a couple times and you took a point off the board and went for 2 and didn't get it? Like, what are the things that are the issue for Sirianni, or is it just that they almost blew the game?
Yeah, like if they had blown the game. They didn't blow the game. So
we're
it's cool.
good.
Yeah, but had they blown that game, it would have been a collapse a microcosm of last season. It would have repeated last season, but in a single game setting.
Anything else on this one?
Nope.
Jags are one of those two win teams. Many. I'm interested to see if there's movement this week.
I mean, again,
across the NFL with some staffs.
It's what we predicted, right? Like they may have staved things off with the second London game and gotten a win, but look at what that schedule looks like after that game. There might not be another win on that schedule for a while. It goes Green Bay, loss, Philadelphia, loss, then Minnesota, at Detroit, Houston. I mean, it could easily be 5 consecutive losses. You can't imagine that Peterson would survive all 5.
No.
If that's the way it goes, we're now 2 down, 3 to go.
I wonder how much that. I mean, it was 22-0 on its way to a blow. If it was a blowout,
right?
But the fact that they came back, and again, it was like a kind of a fluky fumble and awesome return by Trayvon Walker to put them in the game.
I mean, even remember the Patriots game. Like at halftime in that game, people were saying Peterson's getting left in London this time. Like the second half went well, but for a half, that game wasn't going well either.
I got no more use for this one. All right, Arizona Cardinals 29, Chicago Bears 9. The Cardinals in sole possession of first place in the NFC West at 5-4 now. The Bears fall to 4-4.
They did it. We didn't think they could, but they did it.
The Cardinals?
3 straight games.
3 straight games. And they did it in a way that was completely different from what we had described before, where, look, there were some awesome plays from Trey McBride in this game, but it wasn't the Kyler, McBride, and Marvin Harrison Jr. show. It was the whole team. Cardinals' defense was outstanding. Pass rush was outstanding. The blitz scheme completely just obliterated the Bears' offense just generally. Everything was bad by the Bears' offense. And the Cardinals' run game was really impressive, including a record-setting run. DeMercado, before the half.
What was the record?
I don't know what the record was before, but multiple people, including intern Anthony, put this in here, so we'll give him the full credit here. I believe it was from Elias. DeMercado, before the half, 53-yard touchdown run with under 20 seconds left. The longest run in the NFL since at least 1972. And again, how many times does this happen? We're talking about Saquon before the half on a give-up play. This was like Arizona's just going to run a run play on 3rd and 5 on their own 47. They were content going into the half up 14-9, and they just break it for a 53-yard touchdown with very little, very few obstacles. What am I looking for? Resistance. Very little resistance from the Bears. It was awful from the Bears and impressive from the Cardinals' perspective. But that put them up 21-9, and it was basically an insurmountable 12-point lead from that point on.
Insurmountable 12-point lead. This game also featured the comedy of being a weather game, despite being in Arizona and in a dome.
I know.
That's unusual.
Started raining and hailing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And apparently, despite having a roof on it, the stadium, the roof was open at the time, and it takes 10 minutes to close. So it's not like you can just go, oh, crap, it's raining, quick, close the roof. You can, but it's going to take 10 minutes for that thing to go over the top. So it got very wet on the field, despite it being in Arizona in a dome.
Who was the announcer? You said
Charles Davis. Charles Davis. So obviously, it's like
33rd team member, our colleague.
It looks ridiculous, right? It's pouring with rain, like the Green Bay Detroit game in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and this game were occurring at the same time. And for a period of time, the weather was the same. Hideous rain, ruining like everybody's footing. The game's a mess. Only one of them is in a dome. So it looked ridiculous, right? You're like, okay. So they quickly hit the button and then wait 10 minutes for the roof to go over the top. Charles Davis was making the argument that Arizona should leave the roof open and then send all their guys in and change into rain cleats, because there's absolutely no chance that the Chicago Bears even brought any weather cleats, because it's in Arizona and it's in a dome. Either it's going to be outside with the roof open and the weather's great, or the weather will be bad and the roof will be closed. So why would we need, long cleats? I think that's smart. I think that's sneaky.
Does this go down as an official dome game in the stats? Was this a dome game or an outdoor game?
I don't know who makes that call.
Somebody's got to make that call. It's an important one.
I don't know.
Huge play in this game. Cardinals kick a field goal to go up. I think it would have been 10-6, and Bears get called for leverage. There's nothing more demoralizing than you make a goal line stand and then get called for leverage on the field goal. And Cardinals come back, they score a touchdown, go up 14-6. It's essentially a 4-point penalty for the Bears. Again, special teams, just don't screw up. If you just don't screw up special teams, you'll be okay. If you just don't have disastrous negative plays, forget positive plays.
Your special teams doesn't need to be great. It just can't be the reason you're losing games.
Right. Don't suck.
Yeah,
on special teams.
Don't suck.
It's creep back toward average on the offensive line. Don't suck on special teams. Yeah. That's the key. It's a 4-point play, essentially. So like a 4-point play there, and then a 7-point play, a 53-yard touchdown before the half. I mean, that's losing football.
It is.
By the Bears. It's also a little – so the Bears offense looked awful. It was awful. Every single play. And it wasn't even – part of the reason why we've been so low on the Cardinals is because you just look at their defensive front and it's like nobody's really that good. And especially rushing the passer. They don't have a dominant pass rusher. They lost the Barbarian we have 2-0 since they lost the Barbarian. Don't mention that, though. Don't mention that on the show. They don't have good man-for-man pass rushers.
Well, they're the new no-name defense because the Barbarian was the only name.
It's the only name.
People only know him for his nickname.
But he's inspiring them from afar.
Yes.
Which is why they hit stepped
Well, they're doing
up.
it. They're doing it for the Barbarian.
He's so good. In his absence, they decided we're going to sack Caleb Williams 6 times
like
for the Barbarian.
Win one for the Gipper.
Yes.
Win all of them for the
That's
Barbarian.
where he's inspiring this defense.
I've never seen this before, but do you know how many players on the Cardinals defense, according to PFF currently, had multiple pressures?
Is it a lot?
Yes.
10?
12.
12.
12 players had multiple pressures on that defense, none of whom had more than 4. So they just had an entire defense worth of people getting multiple pressures over the game. That's an insane number.
It's like my evolving Cardinals take. I'm gonna dust this one off again. Jonathan Gannon. Imagine if he has better players.
Yeah.
That's where I'm back now. So I went from they can only win when Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Trey McBride play superhuman football to imagine what Jonathan Gannon can do with better players once you give him a good front four to rush the passer.
They only used 10 defensive linemen in the game, and 9 of them had multiple pressures.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive from their perspective. They were creating some unblocked pressures. They were doing a nice job taking away reads from Caleb Williams.
What is his pressure rate? That must be
he got
through
sacked
the roof.
6 times because he got sacked 6 times. But again, it wasn't just like they were whooping the offensive line. There were certain plays where that happened, but you've got 3rd and 12, no one's open. It's tight man coverage, and Caleb he's trying to get through reads, but it's probably a little bit slow, and then before you know it, pressure's on him.
So that's actually nuts. His pressure rate isn't even high.
They're all turning into sacks,
right?
Yeah,
it's a tick over 40%, but they had 34 pressures as a team. So it's like every time they got pressure, multiple people got pressure.
Oh, it was multiple, yeah, and there was again like summing up the NFL this year, stunts, twists. The number of times where it's like the guards and tackles, and you had, backup left tackle in there for the Bears and everything. The number of times that they just screwed up communication on stunts and twists was awful. Then you have Caleb Williams when he maybe could have checked down or ripped a seam on a play, and he just scrambles into a sack. There's another one where he wants to hit Cole Kmet. I'm just looking at all the sacks for Caleb Williams. He wants to hit Cole Kmet over the middle, but the timing, the spacing on the routes was awful. He's coming open, but like a second late because he's on top of another receiver, and then 3 linemen lose their blocks on the same play. I mean, it's just a combination of credit to the Cardinals. I want to give credit to the Cardinals properly because I haven't given them a ton of credit this year. Credit to them. But the Bears, since their bye week, the offense has taken a step back, and it looks terrible.
Yeah, it does. It's not where it needs to be, honestly. Sometimes the disconnect between the sort of sum of the individual parts and the overall performance of the unit in both directions, I think the difference is generally coaching. So a lot of time, like the Cardinals, right? The sum of their individual parts, particularly on defense, is not that great, but they're playing really well as a defense. I think that's probably a coaching win, right? Imagine if they had players, right? The opposite is true when actually you look and the individual players are not grading that badly at PFF. The talent is there, and yet the unit stinks. That's also probably coaching.
Yeah. You're saying from Arizona's perspective here.
I'm saying from Arizona's perspective, they're overachieving, and I think the difference is coaching. They are coached beyond the sum of the parts.
Yes,
from from Chicago's offensive point of view, I believe the same thing is true, that they are underachieving relative to the talent level, and that's also a coaching issue.
Yeah, I agree. Yesterday there was not a lot of in rhythm, hit the top of your drop and chuck it passes. And when they do, it's like screen game a little bit. It was off from a Bears perspective. And it was the worst from a Bears perspective. Their defense had been really impressive this year. Some of their parts had been awesome defensively, but they got run over. This is their worst run defense performance. I don't know what the stats say, but it definitely felt like it. James Conner ran really well. Cardinals' offensive line deserves a ton of credit. They were moving Bears' defensive tackles in this one, creating a lot of room for James Conner, and so they had over 200 yards on the ground, and it was impressive from Arizona's perspective.
Yeah, one of the biggest names on the now renamed no-name defense is Cardinals captain Kaiser White, who's going to be on NFL Spotlight tomorrow. So
look at that.
Tune in for that.
I like Kaiser. He was always one of my
fun player.
One of my favorites. coming out of West Virginia, as an overhang
Safety,
linebacker safety hybrid guy. Yes. So the Cardinals are 5-4
with 3 straight good performances.
3 straight wins. Niners are 4-4. Rams are 4-4. Seahawks are 4-5. Really tight at the top of the NFC West. And Arizona, again, I think the most impressive thing to me is they won it, in a different way, with defense and run game rather
without
than
Kyler Murray needing to be
Kyler.
Superman.
Yes. So good job by them. What's next? Oh, the Rams and Seahawks. What a ridiculous game. We covered this live on the Instant Reaction Show. The Rams 26, Seahawks 20. Overtime win for the Rams. Again, they're 4-4. Seahawks 4-5. Walk-off touchdown. Matthew Stafford to Demarcus Robinson with the one-handed catch. His second touchdown of the game. 39 yards for the win. Let's work backwards in this one.
Okay.
A little. Seattle, so we're in overtime. It's 20-20. Of course, it's tied. Seattle has the first drive. They go for it on 4th and 1 in field goal range.
Yep.
Decide to go for it. And the people are upset about this decision.
Well, remember current overtime rules.
Remember the rules.
Right.
It's not
field goal doesn't win it. Touchdown does.
Yeah.
Different than it used to be where, any score gets you the win, sudden death. You need the touchdown to end the game. The field goal simply gives them possession with a chance to win it.
So I don't have a strong feeling on this decision either way.
What was fascinating to me was, Benjamin Solak, now of ESPN, came out with a tweet, something along the lines of NGS said that this was a 14.5%, I think, gain in win probability, according to their model, if you get the 4th down conversion, right? Which is a massive number, like a huge delta that says, hard go for this. It's a massive win if you get it. It's absolutely worth doing. And Aaron Schatz, formerly of Football Outsiders, was like, interestingly, ESPN's model has it at like barely above, like it's a minor win, right? I can't remember what the number was, but it was a huge difference between the two models, right? It's like, so we're in this world where everyone's like, hard yes, hard no, like black and white, the world of black and white, go, don't go. And 2 of the biggest models out there are way apart on whether you should go for this or not. So this is the thing that teams are dealing with. Like every time there's a decision, like, these idiots, why are they going against the numbers? They might not be. They might just be using different numbers than you are, because we're all relying on nerd mathematicians and just trusting that their data is correct. I don't have a clue. Like I have no idea what the win percentage is on that. I'm just trusting some guy knows how to put together a model.
That's why, I don't know how every team does it, but I know at least one team who's in the perceived smart category,
right,
has probably 15 or 20 models rolled up into one, an ensemble model, if you will. And so that will happen. Models factor in different things. They factor in the strength of the QB, right? They factor in the strength of the roster. Well, how do you do that? Are you using PFF grades? Are you using EPA? Are you using different metrics? So every model is going to have different inputs. I think it's a little alarming if they come out that drastically different, though, if that's the case. So the bottom line is a certain Michael Lombardi was very upset that they didn't kick the field goal.
Yes.
When just a handful of plays later, the Rams scored a touchdown.
There's no way Lombardi even understands the decisions being made, let alone, Like there's certain people.
But if you want to say, hey, the percentage, you should have kicked the field goal.
Yeah.
Fine. So do you think would that have changed how the Rams played? They needed it.
If they'd kicked the field goal?
If they had kicked the field goal, because the Rams won it with a touchdown,
right,
which would have won it anyway, right? That's not the decision that lost the game for the Seahawks.
Right.
It's not. There may have been other stuff in there, but that's not the decision.
But you can also contrast it with, the end of regulation, right? They have a decision, they score to almost tie it up, right? They're 1 point behind now. So you get that classic decision of, do you go for 2, try and win the game here? Now, it wouldn't have exactly won it because it was 50-something seconds left. But do you try and take the lead with this spot, or do you kick the point and play for overtime? And they elected to kick the point. Either way, they needed their defense to stop, the Rams, so not let them have a field goal so they could get to overtime. The defense does stop, and you can make the argument that, well, if the defense was going to hold anyway, if you'd gone for 2 and got it, you win the game there instead of playing for overtime. Now, obviously, the downside is if you don't get the 2 points, you lose the game immediately. But it's interesting. You contrast the decision. They decided to go for it, try and get the touchdown in overtime. They didn't try and take the lead with the 2-point thing before the end of regulation. Sort of interesting dynamics. Either way, you needed your defense to make a stop. They didn't have a choice at the end of regulation. The defense had to make a stop, otherwise they weren't winning the game, whatever. But in overtime, again, either your defense is going to need to make that stop, otherwise it doesn't matter.
So working backwards on this one, again, the Rams get the walk-off touchdown. How did we get to this point? The Seahawks, Jackson Smith and Jigba had an incredible game. The official stat line not even doing him justice. 7 catches for 180 yards and 2 scores. Also had 2 catches for 72 yards, negated by penalties. And penalties that doesn't even matter. He was open and caught these passes. So he should have had, well over 200 yards. Still ends up with 7 for 180. 2 big passes, flip the field, and Smith and Jigba catches essentially the game-tying touchdown with under a minute left to make it 20-20. That's the decision you said. Seahawks kicked the extra point. But Geno Smith threw some absolute dimes in this game.
Yeah.
Also had the 102-yard pick 6 that he threw. That's what gave the Rams the lead early in the fourth quarter. Red zone interception, one of 2 red zone interceptions for Geno Smith.
The 2 quarterbacks in this game combined for 9 big-time throws and 6 turnover-worthy plays.
I felt that. I felt that watching. I'm like, oh, this is great. Oh, this is bad. Oh, this is great. This is bad. I felt that. I'm feeling that roller coaster.
Some absolutely crazy throws from both of these guys, and some absolutely ridiculously terrible turnovers.
Stafford had a dropped interception, I think, toward the end of regulation that would have been bad. When they had a lead, that would have been a disaster that was dropped. And the Geno Smith second interception, I know the broadcast was giving him a lot of blame, but it was a little dump off to the tight end that you have to throw. You have quick pressure. You got to throw it blind. You're assuming he's going to be there. He kind of gets held up, and it looks awful.
He doesn't kind of get held up. He gets grabbed by the defensive tackle. Braden Fisk grabs hold of the tight end and holds him.
I don't want to play ref in this one, but that was a miss. They had an pass interference on Ahkello Witherspoon where the straight up legs got tangled. Right. There was no other contact. They're classic tangled legs. Don't call it, and they called it on him. I think there was a makeup call a little bit. Well, then they did the Kobe Bryant one, where Kobe Bryant absolutely levels a receiver in a play that's often called.
Kobe Durant?
Kobe Bryant's the safety for the Seahawks.
Oh, sorry.
Not Kobe with a K.
Right.
Kobe with a C.
Yeah.
I know it's messy, yeah. That's often called unnecessary roughing.
Yeah.
But as one of the Steeler beat writers, Seattle beat writers said, it was completely necessary roughing. Just enough. It was not unnecessary. It was just the right amount of roughing.
Necessary roughing.
Yes.
The lesser known.
Yeah. So there was a lot of those back and forth here.
Yeah, this was a wild game from the quarterback point of view because of all those plays. But each one of those guys was making ridiculously spectacular throws, and then ultimately Stafford made the last one.
Both teams Rams win, so they're less worried about these things. But Seattle had the 2 red zone interceptions. Then they also blocked a punt in Rams territory. They just were unable to capitalize, and it looked like it was going to be this massive game of missed opportunities for Seattle. And again, they just kind of flipped the field, throwing to Jackson Smith and Jigba. What an incredible game between him and Geno. That connection between him and Geno Smith. And when we did the preview, we were theorizing, well, DK Metcalf is supposed to be back. He's the downfield threat here.
Yeah.
Smith and Jigba and Lockett have really been short and intermediate threats. But Smith and Jigba, this was like throwback to when he had 300 yards against Utah in the Rose Bowl, where he was just open and catching everything at all levels of the field.
Yeah, well, it was like by necessity. Sometimes some other teams have had this where you're only left with one option in the passing game. Let's just funnel the entire offense through that guy. Metcalf's not back. They just decided, let's just funnel the entire thing through JSN and see what happens, and it worked.
A couple other things I just wanted to highlight here. So the Rams rookies made a ton of plays. Jaden McCullough's got 4 interceptions now as a rookie. Cameron Kitchens was the one with the 102-yard pick 6, the rookie safety.
And had a second pick as well, right?
Yeah. And Jared Verse and Braden Fisk making a ton of plays in the backfield. Verse, we've talked about him. He was our Defensive Rookie of the Year pick. Braden Fisk gets in on 3 sacks. The right side of the Seattle offensive line with massive issues with Anthony Bradford and Mike Jarrell picking up stunts. They were just playing games over those two in crunch time quite a bit, and a lot of plays made against the right side of that Seattle offensive line.
Yeah. Seattle's offensive line was struggling to contain the Rams.
Last thing, Reek Woolen. I mean, there's a couple big plays here. Before the half, Stafford throws one up to Reek Woolen. He picks it off. Seattle scores before the half to go up 13-3. That looked like a huge turning point in the game. But Reek Woolen was the one picked on. Like, he gives up the touchdown to Demarcus Robinson, the game winner, a guy that you, at 6'4", with incredible athleticism, 6 picks a couple years ago as a rookie. Like, you didn't throw jump balls on Reek Woolen. Interception before the half, but Stafford doesn't care. Goes back to it for the game winner. Reek Woolen's been picked on a little bit this year. People aren't afraid of him.
Yeah.
And having some success against him.
Indeed.
That's it.
Yeah.
Did you run out of notes on this one?
I'm out of notes. Yeah. I don't have anything to add to your take that, yes, people are. I mean, Reek Woolen has always been one of those corners that will give up some as well as get some.
Thank you. Is there anything I'm missing? There was a lot going on here. Is that it?
Yeah.
On this game?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go Detroit Lions. I think they're next, right?
Yep.
Is that it? Yeah. Detroit Lions 24, Green Bay Packers 14. Lions move to 7-1. Packers fall to 6-3. It's a weather game. Throw it out, Sam.
And they conquered the weather.
They conquered the weather.
As Dan Campbell said, we were built for this.
Dome team.
Built to play in any weather.
I mean, they are. Like, the dome team thing look, the dome helps your offensive stats over the course of time. Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. But a lot of times the dome team thing gets attached to teams who are built to win in such conditions. The Lions are built like play in the snow, play in the rain type of team, and they had a lot of success with this. Turning point in the game for me, though, the pick six, obviously, before the half. Jordan Love throws it to Kirby Joseph, 27-yard pick six with 42 seconds left in the half. That put the Lions up 17-3. And in this weather, with Jordan Love's mobility issues, with his injury, it was legitimately insurmountable.
Yeah. No, it was, a huge play, turned 10-3, and the Packers had the ball. Like, it was one of those, enough time on the clock to maybe we can get a drive and steal some points before the half. But, it might not amount to anything yet. But 10-3, the Packers trying to steal some points before the half to like 17-3, and now you're in a deep hole coming out of halftime. That was a real problem. Green Bay's defense couldn't stop the Lions' offense, which is a big problem. This was genuinely impressive, I think. That it wasn't just a weather game where it's like, it's outdoors, it's a little bit slippy. It was pissing rain for the entire game.
Very slippy.
Like Irish weather, right? Nobody wants to play in this. It's obnoxious. Jared Goff had a game like this in college where he couldn't handle a ball at all. Just kept flying out of his hands. And everyone's like, oh, look, 9-inch hands. That's going to be a problem at the next level. Can't go to a weather city. He couldn't go to Cleveland. Like, hands like that, not a chance.
I mentioned
Good thing he went to Los Angeles, right?
I mentioned last night that I think it was 2019, in Washington, heavy rain game just like this. He's wearing the gloves.
Yeah.
And he put the ball just rested on his hand. He didn't even grip it. He just
shot-putted it out there.
It's a pie throw,
Yeah.
Sam. You throw a pie. And he threw a big-time throw to Robert Woods. I said, I believe in Goff.
Yeah.
He can make these plays in the rain.
So
he threw the ball well.
He did. So he was out there in terrible rain with his two gloves, but he's still firing the ball around, like with zip on it, down the tight red zone to Amon-Ra St. Brown for his touchdown. Really nice play by him. Sneaky little push-off.
The touchdown?
Yeah. Grabs the ball, like high points it, gets his feet in.
I saw people, sorry to interrupt again, but highlighting that route, that was a Goff Cooper Kupp invention, the fake return route into like a kind of like a fade. And Goff was just staring at him. He was just waiting for that to open up and put it in a really good spot.
Right.
There. It was a good play.
But yeah, so Goff looked really good. The running game is really difficult to contain. That combination of Sonic and Knuckles that they nickname themselves, Thunder and Lightning, whatever you want to call it, like Montgomery and Gibbs, it's such a good pairing because David Montgomery is a great, powerful inside runner, really good at maximizing yardage in tight spaces. And then Jahmyr Gibbs is so explosive that if there's any kind of crease there, he's just gone. And so that part is, as Dan Campbell says, like that's tailor-made for bad weather. Those two, like try stopping that. It's not easy. And when you're able to pass the ball efficiently, albeit not high volume, not deep down the field. If you can just deliver those passes accurately underneath in the bad weather, you are built for that kind of game.
I found a stat last night. I'm not even going to look it up, but I'll with stats, you can just kind of like get in the ballpark. So we'll ballpark it.
I don't think that's how stats work.
It's not, but the Lions running backs, I believe, have the highest EPA per play when they're running the ball. They're at least in the top 5.
Okay.
But the other teams in the top 5 all have a running quarterback. Right. So it's all Baltimore and Washington and Eagles. Right. It's like teams that have that other option. And to me, there's a lot of things that are impressive about the Lions, their team building effort. I love all their players. I love how they play. But that's one of the most impressive things to me is that they have an old school running attack without the advantages of a new school offense. They don't have the built-in advantage of a running quarterback that immediately changes the math. Instead, they just win up front. And they have a good scheme, right? We've talked a lot about the last couple of years, a diverse running scheme. They run outside zone, they run inside, they run power counter, they do it all. But that's what I think is most impressive about Ben Johnson, his system, the offensive line, and the way Montgomery and Gibbs run that. They are so efficient and effective in a traditional running sense without the cheat code of having a quarterback taking pressure off the run game. So just wanted to highlight that again. Last week we talked about the disrespectful runs, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. They just run it up the gut and have success. And it's, again, another way to win for Detroit. And when you have uber efficient Jared Goff at the helm, not putting the ball in harm's way at all in this game, even more impressive because Love had that disastrous turnover, right? I mean, Goff did a really nice job of taking care of the ball in difficult conditions, and that's why Detroit won the game.
They're just swatting aside all these different hurdles that are thrown their way. I mean, the weather thing was at least notable because they've gone on this weird run where they hadn't played a weather game. Or not a weather game, hadn't played outdoors, right? They've only been in domes, and they only have like 2 of them this entire season. So it's at least worth bringing up that, hey, what happens if Detroit has to play outside in Green Bay in the piss and rain? Well, this is now their 3rd consecutive win in Green Bay at Lambeau. That's pretty impressive. They have also yet to be troubled by the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, who was the single most impressive source of pressure of any team in the NFL up until he got hurt. He's been out of the lineup. Okay, they then face a couple of teams that don't have great offensive lines, but then against the Packers, it still wasn't a problem. Like Elim McNeil had some pressure, but generally this was not an overwhelming defensive pressure performance, and it didn't matter because they got the pick 6. They made enough plays, and their offense is so efficient. I mean, this team is just comfortably clearing every challenge that's thrown in their way and looking really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I started mentioning it last night. I mean, there were some very clean pockets for Jordan Love. The weather did help in that respect. There were some clean pockets, and Green Bay was having a tough time just completing a snap, right? Just shotgun snaps were
so that's the thing that's worth bringing up. Like they were down. Josh Myers was out of the game, their starting center. Elton Jenkins, the utility Swiss Army knife they have on that offensive line, he was in there playing center. Usually you think, whether it's going to be a problem for the quarterback gripping, throwing the ball, the receivers catching it. It's also going to be a problem for a guy that's not used to snapping the ball. And suddenly the Green Bay can't rely on a snap getting back to the quarterback cleanly. I mean, they had consecutive plays where they couldn't get a clean snap. That was a real problem for them in this game. And I feel sorry for Elton Jenkins, who's a really good offensive lineman. That's just a really tough situation to be thrown into. That is one you probably don't think about until it's happening in front of you. Oh, no, the guy that's actually a fine backup center is not used to snapping the ball in pouring rain.
Yeah, so I thought that killed any rhythm because if you go back throw for throw, Jordan Love has the awful pick 6 before the half, and really impressive, by the way, by Kirby Joseph in a game where, again, the weather, it's tough to catch anything, just to catch a short pass and then take it to the house. Huge play for the Lions. But Love made some other really good throws. Jaden Reed caught the ball pretty well, but 6 drops total by the Packers. They couldn't find any rhythm, in part because of the rain. But
what did you make of the Brian Branch ejection?
So Brian Branch, what was the play again?
It was one of those plays we talked about before from like 1990.
Oh, that's right. He went helmet to helmet on that.
He came across, absolutely wrecked a guy on those hits that you can't make anymore. Clear helmet to helmet, and they're like, flag comes out, 15-yard penalty.
It was definitely a flag.
And then New York gets on the horn, is like, actually toss him out of the game.
I think that's just too subjective to do right there. Like, it's just way too subjective to do on the spot.
It was a clear, obvious
wanna
penalty.
play-
I don't really understand why they determined it needed to get him turfed out of the game.
Yeah, so it's a clear helmet-to-helmet hit in a week where there was others,
Yes.
right? There's other hits.
At least 2 of them.
And so I don't know how you elevate that to an ejection. You have an entire committee that does this as a job. Like, if you want to suspend him for a game, like, take some time. Go through the week.
Yeah.
Go look at other comparisons. Well, hey, we suspended Kareem Jackson last year. Let's compare hits. Let's do this on Tuesday instead of on the fly, few people in the booth being like, is this bad? Yeah, that's bad. Get him out of here. That's a little ridiculous.
Yeah,
And again, this isn't college where they have target. If you get called for any targeting penalty,
right,
you're ejected. The threshold is targeting, and it doesn't matter how egregious it is. What the NFL's doing here is saying this is targeting. Call it different in the different name in the NFL. This is targeting, but we think it's above this theoretical level that you must get ejected right now. That is a little absurd. And then he picked up another penalty on the way out, complaining about it.
Yes.
So it was like 30 yards on one play. When the Packers were back, it was like 2nd and 19.
Right. Well, at one point, I think the Lions had only had 3 penalties or something in the game, and 2 of them were Branch on the same play.
He had the only 2 for a while,
It was, I think, a particularly stupid penalty.
Yeah, this isn't
because the ball
absolving him. It was a bad penalty. It was
a
dumb play.
So I would sort of say, in a week that had a few of these types of hits, where Brian Dawkins hits essentially, right? All of these belonged on Brian Dawkins' highlight reel, where from the early 2000s you'd be like, that's a great safety play. It no longer is. It's a penalty and has been for a while. But this one was unlike the other ones. This one, I think, was particularly avoidable, where it looked like, okay, the play hasn't been made. You can now ease up and don't have to deck the guy. Like he'd already dropped it by the time Branch decided to lower his head and deck the guy. So that, I think, is maybe the only difference. And again, this is one of those plays where I think the more you slow it down, the worse it looks. And that's where I think you get into problems, is like, once you're slow-mo replaying it 5 times, you're like, actually, look at the time between the ball going and him making this decision. That's egregious. Whereas if you're running at full speed, it's like, it's not that much time. Like
is this that? So Jordan Poyer's hit that put the Bills almost into field goal range. Was it that different?
So that's what I'm saying. Like,
is it enough?
There's a difference, and the difference is timing, but it's like a split second, right? And I think it is enough for Brian Branch to be able to, like, maybe pull out of that hit a little bit, right? But it's not like when you run, it looks way worse when you compare those two in slow-mo than when you compare those two full speed, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I gotcha. While we're here, I was going to mention it in the Vikings-Colts game, but while we're here, a lot of times we say, what's a defender to do? And the best example of what a defender is to do is Kenny Moore last night on I think it was 3rd and long. TJ Hawkinson catches the ball in the flat, just coming off his knee injury. And Kenny Moore has a chance to hit him high and crush him above the shoulders, or hit him low, which you often do with a tight end. Kenny Moore had the most 2024 by the book tackle I've ever seen.
Form technique.
Yeah, like he didn't hit him hard at all. He knew he was going to be short of the sticks by a mile. He picked him up, didn't spike him. He spun him around and gave him like a little mini spine buster. It was the best. It was awesome by Kenny Moore. And that's like the teach tape on how you don't get the penalty, you don't hurt anybody, you don't go too high, you don't go too low. It's tough to do.
It's also just it's just not an excuse.
It just felt like all of the rules coming through, and Kenny Moore with this perfect tackle on how to not even come close to picking up a penalty.
So, number one, what he's supposed to do is to aim about a foot lower for like center mass instead of the head or neck area. I mean, that's the main point, right? Is there's actually quite a large amount of space between like thighs and chest. Anywhere in here, right? There's a couple of feet's worth of target to hit. Anywhere in there is better. Instead, he ends up here somewhere, and that's a penalty. The other thing is, there are going to be plays where you literally can't take that shot anymore. And that's just the reality of the world. That's the same in other sports, where if you're late, it's a foul. What you're supposed to do is to either get there in time or don't take the shot. And that's just the reality. Like, that's not, just because it becomes an impossible situation for the safety does not absolve him. Like, oh no, I'm late on this play, so my only recourse was to injure the guy is not an excuse. That's not a reason to let it go. That's just, okay, if he's late, if he's that late to the play, if he's a half step behind the play so that he's arriving and the only thing left to him to do is to launch himself into the guy's head, you can no longer take that shot. You have to watch it happen because you missed the play.
Pretty much.
So I never bought that as an excuse. What is the guy to do? He's supposed to not make that hit.
Be there faster.
Be there faster or don't make the hit. Those are your two options.
Yeah. We all agreed it was an awful hit.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't. I don't know if I would escalate it to an ejection.
Yeah. Look, if I don't agree with New York New York couldn't get on the phone to like fix an obvious face mask penalty that changed a game.
Their
right?
hands are tied. But their hands are tied.
But you can get on the phone and say, hey, that hit looked a little bit nastier than the last one we saw. Toss him out. That's silly.
And the thing about the suspension, like a suspension's a full game. This was 3/4 of a game.
Right.
But it's the same idea.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like take the time to sit through this, compare it to all other hits, and just make sure that you're suspending him a game and it's justified.
Particularly in a weekend where there's like 3 or 4 of those hits, right? Go through, watch them all side by side, and be absolutely certain that one was worse than the other 3. Because there's no way you could do that live, right? So by definition, they are making a call that they can't possibly be sure is legit until today when they've like watched those 4 or whatever back to back and gone, yeah, that one's definitely worse. But there's no way they were doing that at the time live.
One thing we didn't mention in the Seattle, I knew there was something missing. Puka Nacua was thrown out.
Yeah.
In the Seattle Rams game for a punch, kind of a weak punch.
Yes.
They caught it, and then that's all in the rule book, right? I mean, that's where New York can step in, and you go back and you see people throwing punches.
And that's a fairly black and white one.
Yeah.
Did you throw a punch? Yes. Bye-bye.
All the more impressive for the Rams to pull that one off without Puka Nacua.
One stat that CBS had, the Detroit Lions have had more touchdowns, 28, than incompletions, 24, during their 6-game winning streak. They're the only team since 1940 with more touchdowns and incompletions over a 6-game span within a season.
Back when teams used to run 97 times a game and throw the ball 4 times.
Right.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, the Lions are – look, I really thought they blew that game against Tampa Bay in week 2, and it was like their unforced errors that let the Bucs beat them. I mean, they're that one performance away from being undefeated, and I think they've earned it all the way through. Mm-hmm. A good all-around team win by Detroit. Gutsy performance by Jordan Love. Have to say, dude's battling multiple injuries.
Yeah.
Through multiple injuries this season. There was a point where Malik Willis was warming up. Thought he might go in, but Love, braved it. It was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to, like, he's being judged. It's kind of like the Justin Herbert year where he had the broken cartilage in his ribs and everyone just forgot about it like a week and a half into that. And you're like, Justin Herbert's not playing great this year.
We had to remind you
because the dude can barely breathe. Like, he's out there battling through something that would have you lying in a bed for 3 weeks. Like that, and he's doing that every week. Same thing with Malik Willis. That guy is battling through some injuries, and everyone's just like, well, he's out there, so let's judge him.
The other stat that we had to highlight was 30 straight completions between Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Really?
Per the Detroit Lions
Twitter
account. Yeah. 30 straight completions between both. It wasn't Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir on some kind of run like that?
Don't know.
Great. Are you ready for Sunday Night Football?
Yeah.
Minnesota Vikings 21, Indianapolis Colts 13. Vikings moved to 6-2. Colts moved to 4-5. Ugly game that got flexed into Sunday Night Football.
Ugly game.
Ugly game. It was 7-0 at the half, the only score being the great Kenny Moore with a fumble return after Sam Darnold took a lariat to the face, put the ball on the turf, and Kenny Moore picked it up for a touchdown.
We're just not giving Darnold any kind of face mask, head, and nothing. Just fair game.
I kind of get it. It was like a deflecting blow to the head. Like it deflected quickly off of his face.
Blow to the head.
So they didn't give him the full clothesline 15 yards.
That's a heavy, strong man launching his forearm into a quarterback's face pretty forcibly.
Darnold with a fascinating game. I don't know how much you want to blame him for that fumble. That was a tough one when he did get punched in the face. 2 really bad interceptions, but only 6 incompletions. He goes 28 of 34 for 290. Justin Jefferson uncoverable in this one. And then, of course, the other big story for Indianapolis, Joe Flacco at the helm, no offensive touchdowns with Flacco taken over officially as the starter for Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, so big picture, I guess, sort of a bounce-back game for the Vikings defense. You know, we had said, okay, they played the Lions where they got sort of beaten in the chess battle, and then they played the Rams, and the Rams really exploited their defense. And you're like, okay, that one was a bit of a worrying blueprint to potentially attack this defense. How do they do next week? And I think a big part of going with Flacco instead of Richardson in this game was that. A huge part of it is obviously the tapping himself out of the play thing. I think another part is we're facing the Vikings defense this week. Let's give it to the veteran that's seen everything as opposed to the rookie that's completing 44% of his passes just anyway. But Flores' defense, I think, was back doing a really good job. Now, Flacco got some joy against him, had some good plays, but generally you would say that's a pretty solid bounce-back game. You know, they caused some problems. The Colts did not have a huge amount of efficiency. On third down, fourth down in particular, they didn't have a great performance. So generally, I think that's a pretty good bounce-back game for Minnesota.
Last year we tried to be so realistic about Joe Flacco, and it was just the guy won comeback player of the year, you know?
Yes.
And
it was so egregious that they've changed the rules.
And he elevated the Browns offense so much, and then he came in this year and elevated the Colts offense until this game.
Yeah.
He really had. Just to remind people about Flacco's career, the last time he was a starter was with the Broncos in 2018. I said this in the preview show. And the arm looked like he had lost it a little bit. He didn't have as much zip because he used to have a cannon. And he always had kind of, I called his pocket presence the internal hourglass. You know, just kind of took a beat longer than he needed to in the pocket. It was almost like all that stuff was better last year with the Browns. Arm was better. Pocket presence and feel was better. Earlier in the year, similar with the Colts, giving his playmakers opportunities to make plays. This felt like older Flacco. A tick slower in the pocket. Bad interception, which just left it short.
Yeah.
You know, misread the coverage, but I think he just left the pass short. This felt like the Flacco who had diminishing arm strength and diminishing just pocket presence and feel in his Broncos days.
But my point of sort of a bounce back game for Flores and the defense.
Yeah, you're going to give them the credit.
Yeah,
for it.
It was a long way around to saying, look, everyone's dunking on the Colts for the decision to go with, you know, Flacco over Anthony Richardson in this game. Oh, well, look, I guess you fixed it, right? Going with the veteran as opposed to Anthony Richardson. He was obviously the problem. You have to at least play through the counterfactual in your head, right? What does Anthony Richardson look like going against this defense on prime time? You know, is it better than what we saw from Flacco, or do we get like 4 interceptions on, you know, crazy bad decisions and he completes like 8% of his passes? You know, I think that's at least worth raising as a question. Obviously, Flacco did not have a particularly good game. It didn't, you know, the offensive production, the offensive performance, the Colts didn't get much going on offense. It wasn't good. I don't think that necessarily means Richardson would have been better. I think this is like the Flores defense outside of the last 2 weeks has been putting everybody in an absolute blender. I think they bounce back this game, and consequently the Colts go back into the bucket of everybody else, and they had a bad game against this defense, along with C.J. Stroud, along with Brock Purdy, along with all the other quarterbacks that look like crap going up against this defense. So I would certainly tap the brakes on this idea that, you know, Anthony Richardson could have done as well as Joe Flacco did yesterday. I'm not sure that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic because I think the Colts running game is much better when Anthony Richardson's out there.
Sure. And
the pass game has been just, again, there's games where there's 9 completions for 200 yards, and, you know, the 44% completions was not a coincidence with Richardson under center. So you just didn't know what you were going to get down for down, even if the ceiling was higher with Richardson. The spectacular Jordan Addison touchdown that you mentioned earlier.
Crazy catch.
Do you want to talk about that?
I mean, just was an amazing catch. Like that one I don't think gets enough credit because
it's essentially a one-handed catch that he just smoothly turned into a two-handed catch.
Yeah.
Right.
And he stabbed it out of the air. Like, it was a weird, you don't usually see that mechanism. Like, normally when you see these
past him.
Yeah, well, normally when you see these one-handed catches, you're sort of cushioning it coming out of the sky, and it just sort of sticks to the incredibly sticky gloves, right? And you can kind of cushion that catch. He sort of, whilst horizontal, was like full stretch diving, just kind of stabbed it out of the air and then kept control of it the entire way, got a second hand on it. Just incredibly difficult thing to do, and amazing catch by him. Like, huge play.
Other huge play in the game was the Vikings as they're potentially running the clock out. They're up 14-10. It's late in the fourth quarter. As former boss Chris was like, hey, I think we'll see if they're going to stick with the run game here with the Vikings. And they go play action, roll Darnold out, hit Josh Oliver for the 14-yard touchdown. Kind of a busted coverage by Indianapolis. But again, scheme it up. Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings, they had two options for Darnold. Puts the safety in a bind. Darnold makes a good decision. That puts them up 11. And the Colts just tacked on a 54-yarder very late to just try to kick the onside kick. Vikings get it to end the game. But great call by O'Connell. And the
really
Vikings.
Ballsy call. Like, they, it would have been easy to just run the clock down, kick a field goal, and just try and play defense essentially. Instead, they were like, no, let's go for the jugular. Let's put this game away right now. From Darnold's perspective, he also had, like, Justin Jefferson's open underneath, a much easier pass, albeit for less yardage. Like, you had a completion there that was a lot easier. Instead, he decides, no, I'm going to layer this over a defender and go for the touchdown instead to Josh Oliver. No, it's not like, okay, there's TJ Hawkinson, or there's, another receiver that I really trust. He passes up like a shot to, or an underneath throw to Justin Jefferson, who could have done something after the catch. Instead, goes for the game ender, essentially, the touchdown to Josh Oliver.
I'm a Josh Oliver fan. Have been since his San Jose State days.
Who makes a pretty nice adjustment on a ball that's thrown inside him a little bit. Anyway, just a great ballsy call. Nice play by Darnold to pass up the easier play and go for the touchdown. And then nice adjustment for Oliver. Just great execution all around by the Vikings to essentially ice the game when they could have played it much more conservatively.
We don't talk a lot about backup tight ends, but Josh Oliver has been a pretty solid pickup for Kwesi. Like, they didn't spend a ton. I mean, they spent a lot for a backup tight end. And at the time, it was like, hey, they're making a move to go this route. He's obviously had to fill in a lot for TJ Hawkinson. Hawkinson makes his return last night, but Oliver's been a key part of that offense as a run-blocking tight end, and then, capable of catching a wide-open touchdown pass as well. Mm-hmm. And then Darnold, look, I think we're as guilty of this as anybody, kind of waiting. You just wait. When is there regression coming? I think this has been Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, like guys who just don't have this track record. Is it all going to end at some point? And when he throws an early interception in the end zone and then an interception late, it's like, is it going to all fall out? But like, this was really not one of his cleanest games, one of his best games throw for throw with two bad decisions in there.
But isn't that where we land with these quarterbacks? Like, we sort of wonder, when are they going to turn back into a pumpkin and start playing like crap again? And all of them actually, what happens is they just settle into like a pretty good but inconsistent quarterback. So with Geno Smith, now he's just good, but he's going to have games where there's some bad decisions in there. Baker, he's good, but the streak shows up where, we forced the ball, and now he's playing badly. And Darnold, it's like, he's not going to become seeing ghost Sam Darnold again, but he's probably not going to play like a Pro Bowler for the entire season. Like, you're going to get games like this where he plays pretty well and then has two really bad calls.
And then at the end of the season, I don't mean no disrespect to the Vikings, but the chances are that they're not going to win the Super Bowl. The odds are not in their. It's not more likely than not that they're going to win the Super Bowl,
correct.
Right?
Statistically.
Yeah. So like 31 teams. So at the end of they end in the final 8, or maybe they're in the NFC Championship and they lose, and we'll have this. You just can't win a Super Bowl with Sam Darnold, right? Like, it'll get to this binary, right, where you're either Super Bowl winning quarterback or you're not. But for right now, that was a good game, I thought, by Darnold. And when he does throw those picks, I thought he's done a good job with the amnesia that you need. You need amnesia when you make bad plays, and you don't let them compound. You don't let 1 or 2 turnover-worthy plays turn into 6. And he's done that well, I thought, throughout the season, is bounced back from what could have been catastrophic decisions. Yeah. And then not been gun-shy throwing the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't let it affect him. Again, that final play where they decided to go for it all, I mean, that's a good Darnold play. It's a good decision. It's a good throw. He layered it over a defender. Like that, if Darnold had gone in the tank and had, lost all confidence after throwing a bad interception that could have really cost him the game, he doesn't have the confidence to make that, or he makes a bad, executes it badly. It's rolling to his left, the uncomfortable side for a right-handed quarterback, Instead, he makes the play when he needed to. Good performance. Also wanted to one shout out again for Jonathan Grenard, who's been such a good pickup for them. That last drive where the Colts are trying to get something going, Grenard single-handedly took that over and started destroying the Colts left tackle.
I lost track of time. We're up against it. That was good.
Yeah. Now we out, except for
not
the thing
completely, because I love going to watch football games live, and I love our friends over at GameTime who make it so easy to find the games that I want to go to, get the great seats that I want, and get the pricing that I want. GameTime Picks is incredible. It filters out the fluff to make sure you only get the incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. So it's not just sports. You can find anything over at GameTime. The all-in pricing is a fantastic feature. You just toggle it, and it shows the total up front. So there's no surprise fees at checkout. You get to see a view of your seat. You get the panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And GameTime also has the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is also covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with GameTime. So download the GameTime app, create an account, use the code CheckTheMic for $20 off your first purchase. That's what I did when I go to local Bengals games, college football games, when I, concerts, comedy, whatever it is. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CheckTheMic, CheckThemic. You get $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Also time for us to wrap it up before we get kicked out of the studio. So that's week 9, almost in the books. We got Monday Night Football tonight. Bucks and Chiefs, a Super Bowl 50-something rich rematch. Which Super Bowl was that? It's one thing I'm not good at is memorizing the Super Bowl number off the top of my head.
Yeah, we got the number and the Roman numerals.
Yeah, I know Roman numerals really well. I know how to use those.
You know how to numeral?
Yeah, I know how to do that. I just don't know how to remember which one was
the number.
Which.
Okay, cool.
I remember Broncos-Panthers was 50.
Yeah.
It's all fuzzy on either side of that.
Gotcha.
Anyway, Bucks-Chiefs tonight. We'll instantly react right here on YouTube, and then we might instantly react tomorrow. It's not for the election, but the trade deadline. If there's big trades, we will have instant reaction. And then we should put election results in the title. Can we do that for the SEO? Yeah. We're gonna say trade deadline and election results tomorrow afternoon on YouTube. Hit thumbs up, hit subscribe on the way out. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Wednesday. More Check the Mic.